Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Marvel, the game I made invaded reality. Chapter 41. Buzzing. The early morning light crossed the horizon and shone on the Wangshagobi, reflecting a faint golden light. Under the watchful eyes of Stark and others, a pitch-black armed helicopter slowly landed in the camp like a huge black eagle. When the cockpit door opened, Stark's eyes widened when he saw the immature face of the young man who came down. Merlin. My God. Merlin's beard is really you. When Frank and the others told him that it was Merlin who was responsible for the logistics and planning of this mission, he still had some disbelief. After all, the other party was still a high school student, and he didn't even dare to think about running all the way to Afghanistan to save him. Merlin smiled and waved to him. Long time no see, Mr. Stark. Long time no see. To be honest, I was really shocked when I saw you. Stark shook his head and said with some emotion. After the two chatted for a while, Merlin looked at the two lying on the ground. Erica, who was dressed in red, was pierced by a short fork in the chest, and she was already silent. Bullseye's vitality is still very tenacious, but even if he is saved, he will only be paralyzed in bed in the future. Frank said, under the spray just now, Bullseye's spine has been shattered by him. Apple City, Broadway, Manhattan. The roadblock drifted sideways to avoid it, and the next moment it also turned into a huge robot with scarlet eyes breaking through the gunpowder smoke, and its hands turned into cutting claws and rushed directly at the Hornet. After taking off the battle armor, he followed Natasha and the others into the helicopter, called Obadiah and Pepper to report their safety and asked them to send someone to bring the things back, and then left the camp. We are still teammates for the time being, Frank said lightly. At the same time, a small robot popped out of the barricade like a spider and chased after Sam. And Natasha also reported the situation at the scene to Director Fury. However, today, there was chaos on the prosperous Broadway street. A yellow Chevrolet sports car was speeding on the street, chasing a police car from behind. No, you are Mr. Heartthrob. But in a panic, he obviously couldn't run away from the small robot that was chasing him, and was soon hooked by the opponent's claws to the backpack. This is the only way. Of course Stark didn't want to give up. This was his first battle armor. Even if it was very simple, it still made sense to keep it for collection. No, I'm Sam Witwicky. Sam looked at the drill bit getting closer and shouted in horror. Accompanied by a crisp sound of mechanical transmission, the parts of the car were scattered and reassembled, and the Chevrolet sports car his father bought for $4,000 turned into a tall robot. Facing the pursuit, Sam, who hadn't figured out the situation, could only panic and evade in the forest of stone pillars. The Ford Mustang 281 police car that was chasing after him was even more strange. The driver's seat was empty and unmanned. Sam turned around in astonishment, and saw a modified red Ducati locomotive galloping towards the two giant Autobots. Behind the bullseye is a bloody mess, but it is still breathing weakly. The game is not over yet. Gotcha. Merlin shrugged, then looked at Stark and the two of them. Boom! The plasma cannon exploded suddenly in front of the barricade, stirring up a dense cloud of smoke and sparks. Soon, as the two sides chased each other, they came to the bottom of a remote viaduct, which was deserted and full of concrete pillars. But in the end, it was because of internal strife that one died and the other was paralyzed. Plop! Dragged by the small robot, Sam suddenly fell to the ground. The bumblebee that received the frequency didn't answer, but just drove Sam towards the open area. Bumblebee, stop, and give that human to me. The barricade's shout turned into a special frequency and spread. But speaking of it, it's quite surprising that you didn't kill him with a last shot. Thinking of Frank's methods, Merlin was a little surprised. Tell me, are you Mr. Heartthrob? If the distance is closer, it should be a big mouth. Barricade is a scout and hunter among the Decepticons, usually equipped with a reconnaissance Cybertron spider similar to a hound. The two were galloping on the street, and in the driver's seat of the dilapidated Chevrolet in front of them was a short-haired high school student, covering his head with his hands at this time, yelling incoherently in panic. Now there are just two empty seats. Merlin pointed to the two people on the ground and said. Ethan looked at Stark. To be honest, he was still a little confused about the current situation. Tisk, isn't it good to complete the task well? You must grab the head. Merlin shook his head. Then, under the stunned expression of the other party, he began to transform. The mission went smoothly, and under his constant reporting, almost no one was injured. And even without Merlin, they have no problem trying to deal with the enemy, but the error tolerance rate is very high. If you are reluctant, you can call and ask your people to come and get it. Okay then, lift the two of them up and put them in the middle of the cabin. Let's go, we can talk on the plane if we have anything to do. However, Merlin also expected this, and was not too surprised. But at this time, Fury was having a headache with a mysterious intrusion signal. Seeing the drill getting closer, Sam suddenly thought of something. Wait a minute, my internet username is Heartthrob. The moment the Hornet transformed, the hand cannon shot out, aiming at the roadblock police car that was chasing after it. However, before he finished speaking, the opponent's head was pierced by a red laser. Bumblebee drifted sideways, opened the car door, and threw Sam inside. Puff, puff, 4 missiles roared out, enveloping the Hornet. What about my armor? Stark asked, pointing to the original armor on his body. Broadway is the theatrical entertainment center of Apple City, close to Wall Street, and has always been a place for many high-class people to entertain. Of course we are together. I don't want to stay in a camp full of corpses. Stark replied without thinking. Of course I left it here, my plane can't hold him. Are you going to go back with us, or wait for someone to pick you up? Who? At this moment, there was a sound of breaking through the sky, and a gray F-22 Raptor suddenly appeared on the battlefield. Buzz buzz. The sharp claw in the little robot's hand rotated at high speed, approaching Sam like a drill. Boom boom boom. Under the impact of the fire and explosion, the Bumblebee was directly thrown out and smashed heavily on a concrete pillar. But just when Starscream was about to transform and catch Bumblebee, several missiles suddenly exploded on his body. Boom boom boom. Starscream's F-22 Raptor fighter fuselage exploded into clusters of fireballs, and the main body fell straight towards the ground. Bang! After landing, Starscream turned into a robot and rolled down a few times, then looked up at his attacker in astonishment. Who is it? RC. Bumblebee, who recovered from the explosion, obviously also saw RC, who was flying in the air and had undergone earth-shaking changes. He shouted a little uncertainly. You know, the firepower and engine equipment of the 3 sisters of RC have always been much weaker than theirs, but what the hell is flying in the sky now? A Vulcan machine gun was carried on her shoulder, a laser pistol was held in both hands, and 2 shuttle missile boxes were placed on her back. The atomic energy engine sprayed blue flames to support her body suspended in the air. Compared with Alcee, who had only 2 pistols and was thin, the one in front of her undoubtedly became an individual arsenal. Starscream and Barricade looked at RC in the air with unbelievable expressions on their faces. They have dealt with Autobots a lot in Cybertron. RC is basically a small investigator, attacking they are basically painless. But now, it doesn't look like it used to at all. Oh, shit, you still have the energy to transform a small robot. You are really a bunch of idiots who only waste resources. Starscream, who came back to his senses, immediately mocked. Now that the resources of Cybertron are in jeopardy, they are all being used wisely. The transformation on RC's body is undoubtedly a waste. I don't have Cybertron technology, I'm a brainless idiot. Of course, RC retorted flatly. I'll let you know that no matter how you transform it, it's just a weak bug. Seeing that the little guy in the air dared to shout, Starscream jetted out the engine on his back, and charged into the air carrying a huge mechanical body. Several missiles sprayed out with their tail fins, attacking towards RC. But facing the incoming missile, RC took a deep breath habitually. Although it was useless, the power of the engine was still much stronger under the psychological effect. This is still the habit she left behind when she transformed into a piston engine. Instead of retreating, she rushed forward. In the light red transparent glasses, the virtual panel flickered continuously, the red frame flickered a few times, and several missiles were quickly locked on. RC raised both guns and pulled the trigger. The red laser shot out suddenly from the pistol, precisely pointing at several incoming missiles. Boom boom boom. In an instant, clusters of fireballs burst out from the sky. Phew, RC suddenly broke through the smoke and came in front of Starscream. Taste this. The gun barrel of Vulcan Gatling turned slowly, and then the densely packed bullets formed a beam of light and poured on Starscream's face. Stick to your face and open up. Da da da. In an instant, Starscream's face was splattered with fire, and the liquid flew. Ah, he who just wanted to teach RC a lesson cried out in pain again and fell to the ground. Starscream. The barricade who was fighting the Bumblebee couldn't help being a little stunned when he saw Starscream falling back with his face covered. When did this guy RC become so strong? At this time, RC in the sky took advantage of the victory to pursue, and deadlock missiles poured down from the sky towards Starscream and the roadblock like a rain curtain. Boom boom boom. Let's go. RC glanced at Starscream and the roadblock that were enveloped by the explosion, and suddenly shouted to Bumblebee, who was still a little dazed. Starscream was right. No matter how she changed it, her size and reserves were just that big. In the series of impacts just now, in addition to the pistol's laser, most of the missiles and bullets she carried had been consumed. There is no benefit in continuing to entangle. Oh, Bumblebee, who came back to his senses, quickly transformed into a sports car and drove the frightened Sam away with RC in the sky. The gunpowder smoke from the explosion gradually dissipated, with a ferocious face, and the liquid was still flowing, revealing a tattered, ghost-like Starscream. Under the fire of the Vulcan machine gun, the corners of his mouth, eyes, and cheeks, almost none of them are intact. RC. Looking at the disappearing RC and Bumblebee, Starscream let out a low growl unwillingly, the voice seemed to be forcefully squeezed out of his throat. The roadblock next to him looked at Starscream with some fear. The other party's current appearance and voice were really scary. In the evening, Merlin modified shop. What, you regard me as part of the lottery? Stark's voice sounded after getting off the helicopter one after another. You are worth 10 heads, otherwise everyone would go to kill people and no one would be willing to save you. Merlin and Uncle Punishment said as they carried Erica's body down. Natasha lifted Bullseye down with John. Please, this bet shouldn't exist, it's too much fun. Stark expressed his displeasure at being treated as a lottery. Because of this bet, I was taken aback by them. You guys are too unprofessional, you can recruit such lunatics. He pointed to Bullseye, and then said regretfully. It's a pity that I saved my beauty in red. The development was too fast at that time, and when he realized it, both of them fell to the ground. No way, the people who accept the mission are all random, you should pray that there is only one lunatic in the team. After putting Elisa on the ground, he waved his hand indifferently and said. If it's all this kind of rescue team, you're probably about to bleed a lot by now. That's right, the people on this game platform are really uneven, and it seems that they will not be able to easily issue tasks on it in the future. Hearing this, Stark also had lingering fears. He didn't want to go into the wolf's den as soon as he came out of the tiger's den. What about the two of them? Natasha and John asked after putting Bullseye on the ground. Although both Bullseye and Erica are known to be excellent mercenary killers, they know very little about their relatives and friends. Leave it to me, Merlin said. Tony. At this time, Pepper and Happy, who had been waiting for a long time, came over excitedly. After Tony confirmed that the task was completed, he followed Pepper and the others and left first, while John and the others began to share the rewards. Because Bullseye is not dead, the opponent's 5,000 million share is still transferred to the opponent's player account as promised. And Erica's was handed over to Merlin. Everyone doesn't value money very much, and after getting what they want, they are ready to leave. Then who will win the winnings from this bet? Natasha suddenly asked. Frank and John, who were about to leave, also stopped in tacit understanding. Let me see. Merlin turned on the computer and took a look. The final winner. Uncle Punishment. The next day, Queen's Sewer, a hidden and narrow studio next to the drainage ditch. Tick, tick. In the quiet and cold environment, two huge lizard men with green skin were making potions in the studio, and the dim lights illuminated the rows of green potions on the shelves. The lizard man who looked strong and fierce was Professor Connors, while the slightly thinner and more capable lizard man was Peter Parker. After giving up Ramelin and joining the gang, the two of them hid in the dark sewers and built a temporary studio, constantly producing lizard potions in preparation for their final plan. Ding, ding. Suddenly, a mobile phone ring rang simultaneously in the quiet sewer, causing the two people working at the same time to turn their heads and look at each other, and then looked at the mobile phone on the table next to them. The screens of the mobile phones that were originally quietly black screens were all lit up. Connors walked over, picked up the phone in his giant palm and checked it. R**. He was a little surprised to see the inexplicably extra app on his phone, and then looked at Peter, who also picked it up with 2 fingers and showed him that there was the same app on it. Merlin sat in front of the computer and stared at it for a long time, and was a little surprised to see that the other party did not accept the task. About 20 years ago, Homo sapiens appeared, and it is not easy to find their signal in the dark and deep sewer. After finishing all this, Merlin also picked up the latest news. Hell's Kitchen has stabilized, and there are no problems with basic production. Only some items with higher technical content still need to be manufactured by Merlin himself. It seemed that every word struck a chord in their hearts, making their tails twitch involuntarily. His cold vertical pupils narrowed and he stared at the app icon on his phone for a long time, while his mind was thinking crazily. The sudden appearance of mysterious apps and tasks that fit their ideas made them feel unreal, as if a pair of big hands were manipulating something. The other party's app can be remotely installed on his mobile phone, which means that the other party can also determine their location. They had been in the sewers for so long that they were almost disconnected from above. He was not too anxious about this, but began to expand the area covered by the platform. Observe again, Peter, you go back to school tomorrow and see if there is such a mysterious software suddenly appearing in society recently. But when the time comes, it will be enough to hang it on the mall and make a limited number, and it is not a big problem. After all, limited editions can show the preciousness of special vehicles and weapons. But now, someone is able to provide them with materials and create more devices to cover the entire Apple City. Professor Connors, Peter asked, what do you think? Shall we continue with the original plan? And so far, human beings have experienced the Stone Age, the Iron Age, to the current Information Age. In the long period of time, the technology of the times has been constantly improving, but human beings themselves still seem to stay in place. I think we can agree. This is exactly what we are going to do. Why not give it a try? Peter put forward his own opinion. Lizards rise. Then, he clicked on the news screen. The first one was a chase on Broadway. Are you accepting the mission? Zooming in on the blurry surveillance screen, he couldn't help but widen his eyes when he saw the situation inside the police car. What the hell, Transformers? Although he had heard about the collaboration between Marvel and Transformers in his previous life, and even Iron Man had an anti-Transformers armor, he never expected that there would actually be Transformers in the world he came to. Leading human evolution requires the guidance of great men in history. It is good. A mysterious attack is suspected under the power plant bridge. Connors reluctantly moved their eyes away from the phone, and then looked at each other. Both sides could see a hint of emotion in the other's eyes. Although the task made them excited, it appeared too unexpectedly and he did not dare to take it immediately. Instead, he waited until he knew more about it. Task: please follow the instructions to obtain materials to make 6 Canary devices, and install them in Manhattan, Queens, Brooklyn, Central Park. Just as he was thinking, Peter next to him had already clicked on the app first. But the emergence of lizard people seems to indicate that the opportunity for human evolution has arrived. A police and robber chase was staged on Broadway Street. A suspected F-22 Raptor fighter jet flew over Apple City. I know, but it's best to have some confidence. In fact, Connors also wanted to click OK, but he still felt a little unsure. Evolution, historical greats, rise. Connors did not answer immediately, but turned back to look at the task on his phone and thought deeply. After turning into a lizard, isn't his head so messed up? Their original plan was just to borrow the Canary device on the top of the Osborne Industrial Building to project the lizard potion into the air, allowing people in the surrounding neighborhoods to accept evolution and then develop into other districts. When the platform expands to other areas and the number of players stabilizes, the Canary device on Professor Connors' side should be almost ready. Has it been exposed? But it's not right. If their location has been determined, there is no need to install the app on their mobile phone. Connors and Peter Parker stared at the mission slogan on their mobile phones, and their cold blood felt like it was about to boil at this moment. And those who can afford it in the early stage are some rich people in the rich second generation. Although his temperament changed drastically under the influence of the lizard potion, he still has basic reason. Huh, Merlin, who was still lying on the sofa with a lazy face about to find some fun news, immediately sat up straight when he saw this. I'm also trying to figure out a way to track it in the calculations. Lizard evolution mission. Humans originated about 700 million years ago. About 700 million years ago, Chadian Shah people appeared. About 600 million years ago, primitive humans appeared, and about 580 million years ago, ape man appeared. Hell's Kitchen, Merlin tuning shop. Phew, done. After an unknown amount of time, Merlin breathed a sigh of relief and pressed the enter key, and the edited program was sent to the entire Apple City through the Rockstar subsystem. Come on, join the glorious evolution. A little uncertain, he continued to check the news screen frame by frame, and finally hacked into the police's surveillance system to check all the screens about the two cars. But soon, he seemed to have seen something unexpected, and immediately stepped back for a while, and clicked pause. This is. In the picture, a woman was riding a modified Ducati motorcycle speeding down a secluded street, and the motorcycle underneath her was exactly the same as her own Ducati. Virtual projection. Merlin couldn't help but glance sideways at his Ducati parked in the workshop below. The Ducati was sitting quietly in the parking space, like an art exhibit wearing a red dress. Thinking of the weird faults that occurred during the cleaning and remodeling of the locomotive, his face became strange. It can't be such a coincidence, he muttered, and then observed the screen frame by frame. In the end, he finally determined that the woman riding his Ducati on a secluded street was just a virtual projection. To be more precise, it was the Ducati he left in the shop when he went to Afghanistan and ran out on his own. And also projected a woman to deceive people. What happened that day made him think that he was really abnormal. Looking at the monitoring screen on the computer, Merlin held his chin and thought for a while, but continued to watch. Next is the battle scene under the bridge. Through the pictures taken by the police, it can be seen that the scene was in a mess, as if it had been ravaged by huge creatures, and blood samples that looked like industrial liquids were left at the scene. After reading this, Merlin lay back on the sofa, looked up at the steel frame ceiling and began to meditate. Now it is certain that there really are transformers in this world. Special forces for the study of extraterrestrial things in the 7th district. Yes, wait a minute, how do you know our purpose? RC replied subconsciously, but quickly came to her senses and asked in surprise. He didn't say anything after he got down, just looked at each other quietly with his arms folded. And your fellow enemies, the Decepticons and Megatron. What is this human being going to do? I won't want to. RC. Crack, crack, crack. The dense mechanical sounds joined together, and the red Ducati locomotive quickly transformed into a robot with a sweet and delicate face under Merlin's amazed eyes. Merlin looked at the slender and graceful mechanical body of the opponent. Of course, it was compared with the Transformers in his impression. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hide from you. After all, you brought me here. To be honest, when she really faced the human in front of her, she was a little at a loss. RC began to think wildly, why a human being has such a strange ability, or only for himself, is it the guidance of the Creator? Even the originally expected to remain mysterious, the majestic word subconsciously weakened a lot. Who are you? But in order to confirm the guess, he still asked. I don't know if it's because of Merlin's weapon and engine modification rashly, or because of the embarrassing thing about the headlights roaring when he first came. He didn't go down immediately, but started to invade Eagle Sauce's defense system with the help of the Star R subsystem, and found the 7th district, as well as information about Sam. Do you really want to wait for me to check the weapons reserves before you come out? Merlin did not rush, but walked over slowly. Okay, now she was really panicking. After Merlin closed his notebook, he walked down the stairs to the workshop, and then walked in front of his Ducati motorcycle. While I was checking on you, I also looked up information about the source of fire. It is in the hands of Eagle Country, but the specific location is not very certain. Only then did she realize that the other party had always been very indifferent to her appearance, and she didn't panic at the sight of aliens. What else do you want to hide? Just as RC was thinking more and more, Merlin suddenly spoke, startling her. Snapped. Looking at Merlin who was so close, RC took a few steps back in embarrassment. Her blue eyes under the light red detection glasses stared at him nervously. Having lived in the human world for some time, she knows the complexity of human society. Seeing RC, who was still calm, Merlin spoke again. I'm RC, from the planet Cybertron. RC calmed down and replied. What do you mean? Have you been discovered? Or are you talking to someone else? His mind was in chaos, but on the surface he remained calm and motionless. If it was taken away by humans, it would be a bit difficult to deal with. She swears, definitely not expecting the feeling of the parts being fiddled with, but the increased performance after the modification. I've seen you through surveillance on the trail next to the Manhattan power plant. That woman is just a projection. RC remained motionless. The workshop was quiet, with only Merlin facing a locomotive, but an awkward atmosphere spread inexplicably. Don't get excited, calm down, I only know the approximate location, and it will take a while to get a precise location. Looking at the excited RC, Merlin quickly waved his hand and explained. RC, who was being stared at, began to panic. The frozen mysterious giant organic robot. Sure enough, in the first 2 days, the Ministry of National Defense of Yingzhong encountered a mysterious network intrusion, but the reason has not been found yet. Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Ironhide. Just when his hand was about to touch the opponent's fuselage, the locomotive suddenly trembled violently. I checked all the information about you, including of course the conversation between you and Sam. This is something to play. What? Do you know the location of the source of fire? Where is it? Upon hearing this, RC walked up to Merlin excitedly. Coupled with the shape of the locomotive, he has roughly guessed who the other party is. The battle on the bridge next to the power plant should also have something to do with you. God knows how long they have been waiting on the Earth, but there has been no news about the source of the fire. Merlin paused after speaking, then raised his eyebrows and stared at RC for a while, then slowly said, there is also the location of the fire source. Mysterious Rubik's Cube Research Project booklet. It has been taken away by the human military. Hearing this, RC couldn't help but be stunned for a moment, and then began to think deeply. It's really pretty and sweet, not crazy. Thinking of this, a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. You guys had a fight at the power plant. Because of the fire source. But inexplicably, there are some expectations. Are you sure? She asked seriously. Of course, I can send you the data. Afterwards, Merlin intercepted a piece of data and sent it to RC, who then confirmed it. Merlin, do you want to meet Optimus Prime and the others? Your news is very important. After confirming, RC was a little excited, and then asked cautiously. Ever since the engine and firepower were modified, she never dared to underestimate Merlin, a human high school student, and with the mystery shown today, she couldn't see through him even more. No problem. Of course, Merlin simply agreed. But soon, he thought of something and asked RC curiously, you have 2 sisters, right? Yes, how do you know? RC was a little confused. I just discovered it during the transmission. They seem to have a common core with you. You hacked into my program. RC's voice was deep and deep. Don't forget, your body was transformed by me. Merlin pointed to her atomic engine that was shining with blue light, and then asked, since you have a core, do you share what you feel? Alcy, who was still a little angry at first, blushed suddenly, and then lay on the ground without saying a word, and quickly turned into a Ducati motorcycle. Hey, you haven't answered me yet. Merlin knocked on her shell. However, no matter how he called, the other party did not respond. Super Burn, Bayfit Wolf, Land Comet. Harry. When the person came out, someone immediately recognized him. Looking at RC, who was still motionless as if she was burying her head shyly, Merlin thought about what he had just said and quickly raised his eyebrows in understanding. It should be the reason why you didn't buy the game. At night, Peter returned to the sewer and joined Professor Connors. When Peter walked into the school, the surrounding alumni were excitedly discussing the new R-Star app on their mobile phones. Although the vigilante was completely dark, it was as if he was standing under a spotlight at the moment, which was so dazzling that it attracted everyone's attention. However, the stores on the platform are all in Hell's Kitchen, and they have to think about it if they want to start some actions. You haven't. The mission is real. This platform will definitely be able to find materials for the Canary device for us. Peter said excitedly. Oh, shit, why didn't you invite me to be a player? This must be discriminating against us black people. I just want to know the technology you were linking to. Merlin wanted to see if he could use the shared technology of the three RC sisters to weave a huge supercomputer with a fire source core to build a mechanical army. Only then did the students of Midtown High School realize how many wealthy second-generation students there were among their classmates. As the vehicles in the game he loved appeared one after another, all kinds of strange vehicles that looked like concept cars were parked in the parking lot, as if they were at a car show. How is it? Connors asked impatiently when he saw Peter coming back. Many people still go for the special vehicles with nitrogen acceleration and atomic engines such as supercombustion, vigilante, and tyrant. However, due to the limited quantity, only a very small number of people have bought them. Even though he only received the game invitation last night, someone drove the car in the game today. At this time, Mei Lin, who was also among the classmates, looked at the vehicles driving in front of the school gate, and the corners of his mouth were about to tear apart. No way, did someone really buy it? In addition to this, there are nightclubs, apartments and other properties to buy. Calm down, Peter. Seeing Peter, who was impatient to take over the task, Connors quickly comforted him. But now there are only tens of thousands of players in Apple City at most, and it should stabilize in a short time, and someone should start doing tasks by then. At this moment, the door of the vigilante's car opened slowly, and a boy with curly brown hair came out. Peter looked at the Rockstar software on his phone, and then at the students around who were excitedly discussing the game, and the hesitation in his eyes suddenly became firm. My God, the Batmobile. In reality, no man can refuse this chariot. I also agreed. I want to see if the things in the mall are real. If they are real, I will definitely buy a tyrant. After one night, the zero after the amount has not stopped, and has been increasing explosively, which is faster than printing money. Well, this question is indeed a bit abrupt. Harry was apparently one of them. The robotic arm of the intelligent production line is about to smoke. Behind that is Santarao. After becoming players, they can take on some tasks to make money, and even buy vehicles and weapons that are only available in the game. After seeing that someone actually bought the game vehicle, many people couldn't bear to place an order. And similarly, with the expansion of the platform and the increase of players, the R-Star app-like radiation caused quite a disturbance in Apple City, and the people who were still immersed in the news that Stark closed the arms business also separated, part of attention. Last night, after many people became players, the impulsive ones directly placed orders in the game, and the rational ones drove to the offline store excitedly, and picked up one directly after confirming that it was correct. R-Star, you also have it on your phone. The next day, Midtown High School. We have to think about the purpose of this platform. What are you talking about? What software? Harry Osborn, son of the president of Osborn Industries. Of course, it suddenly popped up yesterday when I was doing the Doomsday mission. I became a player. How about you? No, that's a vigilante. What the hell? Many of my classmates installed this software on their mobile phones last night, and they also purchased the vehicles displayed in the mall. Buzz buzz. Suddenly, there was a deep roar in front of the school gate, and then a black and cool vigilante chariot stopped in front of the school gate. Oh, look, that's Shitaro. One of my favorite motorcycles. For teenagers, this is undoubtedly an exciting and cool thing. Because he was still wanted, Professor Connors did not go out, so he could only ask Peter to go out to check the situation. Up to now, Merlin's balance is still growing rapidly. Excited exclamations came one after another in front of the school gate, and those who hadn't downloaded the game and hadn't become players could only be stunned by this, completely unaware of what they were cheering for. Of the three Fleischers, only blacks were not invited. No, I don't even know what you're talking about. Hey Fleischer, did you have an extra app on your phone last night? Purpose, either for making money or for a lunatic who wants to cause turmoil. In any case, it won't have much impact on us. We have no way out, Professor. Peter said seriously, clenching his fists. Professor Connors fell silent when he heard this. Yes, they have nothing left. After school, Merlin rushed to his modification shop. Since Stark's mission ended, Erica's body was handed over to Matt, and he released a mission to resurrect his girlfriend, and the goal of the mission is of course the hand. As for Bullseye, he also released a mission, which was accepted by the Asian scientist Kenji Koyama, also known as Lord Darkwind. Merlin has also recently taken this opportunity to track Lord Darkwind to see where he got the adamantium metal from. He is more interested in Edmund, Genjin, and Asgard's magic metal Ulu metal. Uncle Punishment also rested during this time, waiting for the opportunity from Merlin. Coupled with the expansion of the platform and the increase in orders for vehicle weapons, many gang members have been busy, either delivering goods or on the way to deliver them. And because of the increase in orders, a large amount of materials are required, and the industrial economy under Jinbin has also grown accordingly. Therefore, Hell's Kitchen, which was originally chaotic and disorderly, has fallen into a strange calm at this moment, and looks like a normal neighborhood on the surface. Autobots, assemble. The prestige value has reached 1,000 million. Rewards, space-based gun technology, Duraso technology, TM-02K Konjali military tank technology. Optimus Prime was a little surprised. Except for the other person's name, the human being in front of him couldn't find anything else on the internet. That is the icon representing the Cybertronian Autobot camp. Thinking of this, he took out the business cards of Stark Industries and Hammer Industries and looked at them. Now in the game, give him love, except for Big Brother's cheating skills, almost all the weapons and vehicle skills have been acquired, and the next game should be unlocked soon. The source was RC lying on the tree trunk, holding a searchlight. Under the cold moonlight, there are the sounds of mechanical collisions, sparks and friction, the centrifugal force of tire rotation, and the crisp bounce of metal sheets. With the expansion of the platform, the reputation value of the game has also skyrocketed, and finally reached 1,000 million. Dong dong dong. Merlin tapped the other party's big face. Ding. When he was writing the task, a notification sounded again. As for the con tank, you can find a way to make one. Sure enough, I still accepted it. The convoy was getting closer and closer, and when it arrived in front of the store, the vehicles began to change under Merlin's amazed eyes. Although the platform has expanded, there is only one person and an artificial intelligence subsystem on the platform. It is barely enough to set up a Liberty City server, but it is still difficult for him to continue to develop. Merlin looked away from the sky, and looked at the task he was given, and he showed a smile. But this thing still has to be built. With the laying of the platform, it will definitely be targeted by many people. Deterrent weapons are a must. After muttering, he began to send transportation tasks to suitable players. I'm Merlin. With the headlights approaching, a convoy led by a fiery-built heavy truck was speeding on the street. Melon Xiao, what a coincidence, is also a high school student. A deep voice came out of his mouth. TP, don't forget the purpose of our visit this time. The ambulance next to him reminded him helplessly, and then looked at Merlin apologetically. Sorry, he was sprayed with lubricant by a dog before. But speaking of it, the stock of Stark Industries has plummeted recently, and he has bought a lot. He doesn't know when the classic scene of Iron Man will come. In today's day, various iconic game vehicles such as Vigilante, Tyrant, Super Burning, Terrardo, and Centero have become popular all over the internet, and they have begun to expand to other cities and even other countries at an extremely fast speed. Merlin also stood up and looked over curiously. Human, you are really rude, he said to Merlin dissatisfied. They're here, RC, who was standing next to Merlin, said looking into the distance. Now to have a space-based gun, you need to launch satellites into space, not to mention it. Optimus Prime didn't seem to expect that the other party would make such a move, and stood up quickly. Kukukiki, we should give him a cannon to let him know what is polite. Iron Skin said violently with his hands dangling. She's calling for other Autobots on Earth. Just as Merlin was watching this scene curiously, the pages of the notebook placed on the small table flickered suddenly, and then a window popped out. Duraso, a ground and air vehicle, is also good, but its maneuverability against fighter jets is still too poor. Bumblebee, Ironhide, ambulance. But now, although Merlin has money, he doesn't have any materials or equipment. The main reason is that his foundation is too poor. Buzz buzz. While Merlin was thinking, bursts of engine roar sounded in the silent night. If you want to build, you need not only a site, but also a lot of materials and time. Although Stark's cold fusion core has reduced most of the time, it is still not enough for Merlin. Hi, "Hello, I'm Sam." At this moment, Sam stepped out of the bumblebee and greeted Merlin. But this time it was in the mind, systematically. He was not too anxious, and continued to look at the following two techniques. "I'm Megan." A black-haired girl wearing a red suspender crop top and denim shorts that reached to the thighs, revealing most of her wheat yellow skin and waist, also waved her hand with a smile. Under the symphony of metal, a huge red and blue Autobot like a knight was half kneeling on the ground, and its majestic big metal face approached Merlin curiously. With Stark's cold nuclear fusion technology, DeRosso doesn't think much about it, and it's okay to sell it to players. Space-based cannon. Merlin's eyes lit up when he saw today's reward, but soon, he felt a little worried when he thought of his current situation. After thinking about it, he put it back again, and waited until the lizard mission was over. Outside the door of the refitting shop, Merlin was sitting on a horse and quietly enjoying the night breeze. At the top of the hill not far away, a huge searchlight beam penetrated the dark dense forest and shone on the bright clouds in the sky, forming a metal for a tough picture. The Lizard Rise mission has started. Therefore, the current 1,000 million is just the beginning. The other party wears big rings in both ears, and exudes wildness all over his body, a stunner in the world. Vehicles such as Turtledove and Tyrant Mk2 can still be produced, but large fortress vehicles such as Avenger and Orca submarines are difficult for him. After getting to know each other, they went straight to the topic and talked about the source of the fire. The glasses are no longer useful. The source of fire marked on them has been moved to other places, but I am still checking the specific location. Merlin took the old glasses from Sam's hand and said, "How did you get these?" Optimus Prime lowered his head and stared at Merlin and asked in a deep voice. RC sent it to them after getting the data, so she didn't doubt the authenticity of the matter. It's just how Merlin, a high school student, got this. Of course I tried to hack into it, and then screened it out. Merlin handed Megan and Sam a bottle of Coke each, and then took out several barrels of engine oil. "Would you like some? He is a refit shop here, not many things, just a lot of engine oil." "Thank you." Bumblebee thanked and grabbed a bucket with his hand. "Hey, boy, you really suit my taste." Tie-Hide's attitude also changed 180 degrees, and he happily accepted it. Ratchet nodded his thanks and accepted it. Although it cannot replenish the energy of the fire source, it is really good as a drink. "Thank you. What do you want?" Optimus Prime took a sip of the engine oil and asked. "Human, do you know what you're talking about?" Iron Skin leaned forward and asked in a gloomy tone. Megan looked at the somewhat hostile RC and couldn't help being stunned for a moment, and finally walked to the door angrily and wrote down the contact information. "Arrived at the mission location, please deliver the goods. This is John's car, and the modification method is based on Boss Tang's inspiration." Before leaving, Megan suddenly approached Merlin and asked, "Next, you only need to place regenerative medicine in the device, and after atomization and spraying, the entire Apple City will be included." After finally getting a clue, they didn't want to give up, and the members of the Decepticons have also come to the Earth, and they must race against time. Seeing that the atmosphere had calmed down, Sam also breathed a sigh of relief. RC needs to personally protect Merlin's safety during this time. And Megan is most interested in these muscle cars. Finally, all 6 devices were assembled and installed. "Can't you give it to me yourself?" Megan blinked a little confused. As for who will eventually obtain the source of fire, it is difficult to say. After everyone left one after another, Merlin also closed the door and rode RC back home. Peter opened the box and nodded when he saw the silver barrel launcher inside. This week he made nearly $3,000. In this month, they traveled to various mission points in Apple City, including Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, and finally the Statue of Liberty torch. He didn't have a cell phone, RC interrupted suddenly. He could tell that the human being in front of him was different from Sam and the others, as could be seen from the modified engine on RC's body and the network intrusion. Optimus Prime and the others rarely fell silent. After placing the goods at the designated location, he drove away from the scene in a familiar manner. The dexterous muscle lines arouse people's hearts. A month later, at night, the Statue of Liberty. Shortly after he left, 2 huge lizard figures walked out of the Statue of Liberty, and then came in front of the cargo. The young man smiled excitedly as he watched the value increase on the Rockstar platform. As the rolling shutter door slowly rose, Frank stepped into the store. Merlin scratched his head. Sorry, what I said was not very clear. After you obtain the source of fire, you have to leave it to me to study for a period of time. We will be the heroes of all mankind. Peter's eyes were piercing, full of expectations for the future. The goods have been delivered. Congratulations to the player for getting dollars. A small truck drove slowly and stopped under the huge cornerstone of the Statue of Liberty. In the driver's seat, a young man wearing gray overalls took out his mobile phone. Very good. The assembly will be completed tonight, and the regeneration potion will be added tomorrow to light the torch of the Statue of Liberty again, taking the first step in human evolution. At this moment, Connors could not express the excitement in his heart, and his voice was trembling. Stand up. After hearing the explanation, Optimus Prime and his gods immediately relaxed. The general transportation is only, but each order of evolution task transportation is more. Oh, calm down, everyone, calm down. Seeing that the situation was not good, Sam quickly ran out to comfort Optimus Prime and the others, then turned around and said anxiously to Merlin, "Hey. Man, you are crazy. Is it? That thing is their lifeblood." In the end, it was agreed that Merlin would help them find the location of the fire source, and after they obtained the fire source, they would give it to Merlin to study for a period of time. "Merlin, can you leave a contact information? You don't mind if I come to your store often?" At the workstation, a modified Dodge Hellcat sat quietly under the light. After modification, the DABS air intake kit on the front cover stood out. The contact information is on the door. Don't move around, the electromagnetic gun has not been installed yet. Merlin knocked on RC and said in a low voice, and then looked at the refrigerator, a bottle. The Decepticons didn't even find out when they invaded the network, but the other party was able to find out based on some of RC's words, which can be seen. Seeing that he had arrived at the designated mission location, the young man stepped out of the car and placed the box in the car on the ground. Merlin Tuning Shop. After Merlin's voice fell, the originally relaxed atmosphere instantly became tense. They came to Earth to find the source of fire, and it was their last fire on Cybertron. How could it be given to outsiders? RC, there is also a fire source. It's a lot of money for this transportation mission, but it's a pity that it's the last order. He shook his head, feeling a little regretful. The launch parts have arrived, and the assembly of the last Canary device will be completed tonight. He said to Professor Connors next to him. RC, on the other hand, felt dizzy at the moment. The prelude tasks have already been started, just waiting for an opportunity to come. As long as you can help us find the source of the fire, it's okay to let you study it for a while. RC can also stay and protect you. Optimus Prime thought for a while and nodded in agreement. Of course, but remember to contact him in advance. I may not be in the store. Merlin smiled back, then pointed to the rolling shutter door. I heard that my blaze has been finished. After entering the door, he asked Merlin, who was busy in work clothes at the workstation. Yes, but you still need to test it. After the test flight is okay, you can drive it. He took a sip of the Coke and nodded. Okay, how are you doing here recently? I heard that many Rockstar offline weapon shops and car modification shops have been closed down. Frank looked around and asked. With the development, all kinds of game vehicles danced wildly in Apple City. Because the source of the platform could not be traced, the police could only attack the stores that participated in the sale of platform weapon vehicles. I'm fine here for now. The location of Merlin's modification shop is still a bit remote, and with the increase in car modification and weapon shops seized by the police, the gang life that was originally stable and profitable has also been disrupted. In addition, Merlin occasionally sent out some tasks in groups, and many participating merchants were also posting tasks. Therefore, the entire Hell's Kitchen began to become chaotic again, and the actions of the Apple City police were also greatly hindered. I don't know how long it will take to find out Merlin's side. With the increase of players, many merchants also joined the platform and began to issue tasks, such as search tasks similar to Dr. Dre, the founder of the West Coast G-Funk gangster rap. Reward missions, car theft missions, robbery planning missions, theft missions, herbal medicine business. Many people have seen the energy contained in the platform and have joined in, and the number of active assets in the game platform has also increased. As long as the Rockstar subsystem and the bunker research are not traced, there is absolutely nothing the police can do to stop the development of the platform. What's more, there are quite a few people in Apple City who are in charge of planning, like Pavel and Lester. But speaking of it, I seldom hear your name recently. Merlin finished drinking the Coke and threw it into the trash can, while continuing to modify the electromagnetic gun for RC and the others. Pareto Bank, Brooklyn. Daredevil Matt has been paying attention to the hand lately. Along the way, the sirens of Brooklyn and the sound of helicopter propellers in the sky never stopped. Then I'll go to Daredevil. I heard his friends are very good at litigation in this area. Rest assured, you know how to change the car. Merlin looked back at him in surprise. Don't be too forbearing. Some customers provoke you and kill them. If there are no customers here, it is God. If you don't want the salary, I don't mind. Merlin rolled his eyes. After a robber walked into the lobby, he went straight to the front desk and used a gun to stop the bank staff behind the counter. Bang! A group of robbers wearing black hoods kicked open the bank door, raised their bullpup rifles and shouted. Police cars, police helicopters, ambulances, fire engines, they can be seen on almost every street. I rented an aviation factory, where helicopters and fighter planes are made. Merlin and Uncle Punishment, who were riding RC, were parked on 8th Avenue in Brooklyn when a sudden roar of explosions came from the Pareto Bank in front of them. No problem, but you have to hurry up, the police should be here soon. The sound of the bank's siren, the wailing of terror, and the rough threat of the gangster all merged into one, and the originally quiet hall fell into a commotion at the moment. An ambulance was nearby to rescue those affected by the explosion. Okay, let's go to Merlin Airlines. After finishing RC, Merlin said with a sigh of relief. Boom. Speaking of which, as time goes by, these players have begun to take on more robbery missions. Frank said while looking at the situation ahead. Bang! A clear gunshot suddenly sounded above the noisy street, and the surrounding area was silent for a moment. But for now, the most exciting and quick way to make money is to rob a bank. Friends, it's time for you to make a choice today. Merlin and Uncle Punishment could only wait outside. Merlin Airlines, I guess I made some money and got all the equipment. Ah, please, don't shoot. You, and you, come out from behind the counter, that's it, hands up. Firefighters are still there putting out the fire. All on the ground, Rob. Mike, you stare at these people, let's get money and equipment. This is our first mission, and it must be done well. The leading robber looked at the quiet crowd and nodded in satisfaction. After giving instructions to Mike's companions, he headed towards the vault carrying the welding gun and explosives. All on the ground, immediately, Frank. Occasionally, it can help you eliminate police bounties. Ah! Suddenly, a sharp female scream cut through the silence. Like a chain reaction, people on the street screamed in panic one after another, and then bent down and opened the door softly. Familiar with the route, he fled around the bank. Okay, I don't happen to be in the store very often, so it's not bad for you to look after the store for me, as long as you don't kill my customers in my store. Merlin agreed after thinking for a while, but he still warned. I'm not good at modifying cars, but I'm good at weapons. Frank said, pointing to the weapons arsenal in his backyard. Everyone wants to be bigger and stronger. Merlin replied, leaning on RC. Hearing Merlin's words, Frank remembered that he didn't seem to have seen anything about Daredevil recently. Every time I cooperate with Merlin, the other party will charge a large sum of money, which is too shady, but correspondingly, the other party's planning and hacking capabilities are also worthy of these shares. Jingle bell, shut up, whoever is talking, get ready to meet God. The irritated gangster who was being noisy swept the sky, and the moment the clear gunshot sounded, the person who was lying on the ground crying seemed to be strangled. He scratched his neck, and the voice stopped abruptly, leaving only a look of horror on his face. Some people rode the Tyrant Mk2 to fly around in the sky, and some people played Super Burning, and after affixing the Red Bull logo, they started working in the city. The road ahead was temporarily blocked, and rows of police cars lined the street, blocking the exit of the bank. People who came to him to buy weapons were mixed, and he was a little afraid that Frank would kill him if he saw a familiar customer. Don't worry, since I want to be quiet for a while, I won't cause trouble. Frank promised. You don't think my small modification shop can make a fighter, do you? It's been such a mess lately. I can't even find my target. Let's take a break for a while. Frank walked to the side and sat down on the sofa. Seeing that Merlin was the only one in the whole store, he suddenly asked, "You have a trick here? Is this what people are planning? I want to find something to do." He doesn't have time lately. But I don't know if it's because the technology is not good or not very skilled, and finally hit a building and exploded into a ball of fire. It seems that you are not too black-hearted. Frank couldn't help joking when he heard the words. There are even traffic jams at the intersection of traffic lights. One person drives the inclined mobile, one person drives the cone phantom, and they play with forklifts on the street. The cars that were suddenly shoveled away were really spectacular. The police were not to be outdone, driving vigilantes, and DeRosso and other vehicles chased after him. Well, there are players among them too. You are already surrounded, don't even think about taking money and escaping from here. Release the hostages immediately, and then let's talk like a gentleman. The team leader stood behind the police car with a loudspeaker in his hand and shouted some programmed words to the robbers in the bank. Boom! As the glass door of the bank was kicked open, a group of robbers came out swaggeringly. The team leader was about to speak, but when he saw the armed robbers, he was dumbfounded. This, so funny. The leading strong man is wearing a rhinoceros heavy armor suit, which is much more expensive than ordinary heavy armor, but he is also much more handsome. Buzzing. Same as Iron Man. Merlin walked up to Kwangyan, opened the engine room in his abdomen, revealing the cold fusion energy core glowing white inside, and winked at him. It's like a dream. Frank couldn't help but sigh as he looked at the armored vehicles driving away and the police helicopters pursuing them. Wow, the preparation is really sufficient. Bang! The brawny robber who was holding a Vulcan to shoot staggered, and then a blood hole appeared on his shoulder. To sum it up in one word, chaos. The leading strong man is a rhinoceros metal headgear, holding a Vulcan machine gun in his hand, and the barrel of Sen Leng slowly rotates. A shadow suddenly passed over them, and the two looked up. Gwen Spider-Man was chasing a man wearing a jetpack flying in the air. Immediately afterwards, a police convoy headed by vigilantes surrounded the armored vehicles heavily. Phew! A burst of electromagnetic waves exploded suddenly, and the armored vehicle that was still galloping on the road immediately turned off and stopped. Oh, shit! Seeing that the other party took out the Vulcan Gatling, all the policemen burst into foul language, tried to fire a few shots, and then fled in a hurry. My God, you made this big guy too. Frank walked up to Tiansha with his eyes shining, and said in amazement. I'm going to test it first, and I'll be right back. Criminal. Or did he help make it? Spider-Man sprays spider silk and floats continuously in the city, but it is difficult to catch up with people wearing jetpack aircraft. Where's the sniper? Hurry up and shoot him. The team leader hid behind a building in disgrace, then took out the walkie-talkie and shouted. Merlin in the distance couldn't help being a little surprised. This robbery team is quite rich. The three planes were like three beasts lying quietly in the hangar. Your Mad Flame is not bad, but I added something good to him. Merlin nodded in satisfaction looking at the photo of Spider-Man drawing his gun in the camera, and then stepped onto the motorcycle. As soon as his words fell, a gunshot rang out. Armor-piercing bullets. The faces of the robbers suddenly changed. After installing the nuclear fusion core, I also strengthened the shell of this fighter, and the speed can reach up to Mach 10. Zoo. At this time, a vigilante with a siren flashing quickly passed by them, with a gust of wind, and chased towards the armored vehicle. The few robbers who came out looked like a human fortress, wearing thick black heavy armor, wrapping their bodies tightly. They are the Invisible Raider, Sky Fiend, and Frank's Wild Flame. Ahahaha, Spider-Man, you can't catch me. The blazing fighter stayed in midair for a while, then jumped out suddenly, and in the blink of an eye, a white light streaked across the night sky and disappeared into the sky. It was clear that Hell's Kitchen was a sinful neighborhood before, but after walking out, his eyes were really opened. Now Hell's Kitchen has become the most peaceful place. Frank took a few steps back and nodded. Under his watchful eyes, after the small Kwangyan drove to the vast square outside, the engine of the fighter plane started, and the nozzle rotated to align with the bottom to eject white energy. Under the huge driving force, the fighter plane instantly rose from the ground, straight into the night. The surrounding Merlin and Uncle Punishment were also surprised. There are snipers. Take cover. But before they could retreat, an orange armored vehicle suddenly rammed away from the police car. Like a giant steel beast, it rushed into the encirclement and came in front of several people, blocking the sniper's sight at the same time. The robbers quickly threw the money into the car, then threw the heavy weapons on the ground, dragged the bloated heavy armor suit and quickly climbed into the armored car. On the contrary, it became orderly under the shadows, and many people were busy making money to buy their favorite weapons or vehicles, and then went out like everyone else. As a counter-weapon, I chose jamming foils, and equipped with homing missiles. The cold nuclear fusion core solved the shortcoming of the Blaze's slow start. "It's not too difficult to make it yourself," Merlin said casually. "Rebels." Merlin introduced the data of Kwangyan in detail, and then went to the cockpit. Boom, boom, boom. Under the continuous strafing of machine guns, police cars turned into fireballs and exploded one after another. In addition, many Oedicus also ran out, and after buying weapons, they began to act chivalrously. At this moment, the police car is like a piece of paper, and in the blink of an eye, it becomes a piece of tattered, full of bullet holes. Whew! A wave of waves suddenly ejected, and the powerful impact knocked down the opponent from the air. It is an out-of-print set in the game. Both Merlin and the distance could feel the vibration of the ground and the scorching heat rushing towards their faces. "Tony Stark is willing to hand over the technology to you." Frank walked over, looking up at the core exuding milky white light, a little surprised. "It's very lively." Merlin's eyes lit up seeing this scene, and it should be even more lively tomorrow. Pa-ta! A series of lights came on, illuminating the vast hangar brightly. Although it is night now, the Apple City under the night sky still looks like the Chinese New Year. On the streets, between the city buildings, and in the sky, there are still demons dancing wildly. But just when the other party was proud, Gwen Spider-Man flipped his little hand, but instead of ejecting the spider silk, he suddenly conjured up an atomic energy gun like magic and pointed it at him. "Let's go. Da 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 da." The barrel of the Vulcan machine gun rotated at high speed, lit up a blue high-temperature flame, and countless bullets roared out densely. "It's really lively," Frank said quietly. "Call out." Merlin drove the fighter plane galloping over Apple City, but just as he accelerated to Mach, two white lights suddenly rose in front of him. As it got closer, Merlin finally saw the true colors of the two white lights. Iron Man, Iron King. The jets of light are one big and one small, like a big fish chasing a small one in the dark night. "Hey, Mr. Stark, what a coincidence." When Merlin spotted the two, they also spotted the approaching blazing fighter. While speaking, Merlin pulled up the control handle, and the fighter plane that was originally parallel to the ground began to be perpendicular to the ground, and then spun like a dexterous flame bird, jetting its tail and spiraling around the two of them. Merlin. Stark was a little surprised when he heard the familiar voice. "It's me. I'm here to try out the newly made fighter plane today. Speaking of which, your reactor is really easy to use. One day I'll also make a set of mechas." "Who is the big iron shell behind you?" "It really looks like the one you wore in the cave. It's much bigger, fat and ugly, and it's comparable to the Hulk who had a fight some time ago." Merlin. I also made a complaint by the way. Seeing Merlin flying around them in a fighter plane like a butterfly, and making sarcastic remarks, Stark couldn't help being a little speechless. "Okay, Merlin, don't follow and fly upwards, it will freeze if you continue. But please wait below to pick me up, my energy is about to run out." And Starscream, by the way, send him the location of the frozen Megatron. Missiles sprayed out with their tails crossed, completely covering the falling Iron Overlord. "You actually pushed me into the fire." Woo! Without the drive, Iron Overlord's huge body let out a whine, and then fell straight towards the ground like a big iron bucket. Phew! The fighter plane passed by in the dark night sky and stopped below Stark. After the opponent left, the missile launcher ejected from the shoulder was ready to retract. "Oh, my God, Tony, it's great that you're fine." Pepper glanced at the place where the fighter plane disappeared, and then came to Stark worriedly. Merlin then returned to Merlin Aviation after completing a thrilling limit test in the tunnel. The installation of the Canary device has been completed, and it is expected to start operation tomorrow night. The little dumb put the data on the screen. After saying that, without waiting for his answer, he disappeared into the night sky. In the matching night sky, Clusters of fiery fireballs suddenly rose, and the flames of the explosion illuminated Stark and the fighter plane red. Boom boom boom. Phew. The raging flames immediately enveloped the fighter and Stark together. Skip the cremation. Merlin shrugged. Seeing Happy, Pepper and the others rushing towards this side, he closed the hatch again. Just wait until tomorrow. Please take a leave of absence. Mei Lin sent an email to the school teacher in a familiar way. As soon as he landed, Stark opened his mask and looked at Merlin resentfully. Icing at high altitudes can be fatal to machinery. The plot of Dog Blood. To be honest, I really want to take a look. Merlin smiled, and then drove the fighter to catch up in the direction where the Iron Overlord fell. The man inside is Obadiah. He was also the one who sold arms secretly at Stark Industries before. He only said a few words, but what happened next was actually very obvious. I'm fine, but I want to eat a hamburger. Oh my god, you are crazy. After the radar lock was completed, Merlin pressed the missile lock button without hesitation. You dog, how dare you take pictures of me? I'll rush in too, okay. Didn't you feel a surge of adrenaline the moment you walked through the flames? Merlin said nonchalantly as he opened the hatch. Dang lang lang lang. Fragments that were still blazing suddenly fell to the surrounding area, making a crisp sound. The next moment, Kwangyan was like a phoenix bathing in fire, breaking through the fiery fireball and sinking into the night sky with billowing smoke. However, at this moment, a layer of frost suddenly appeared on the surface of his metal shell, and the missile launcher that was about to be retracted was also stuck in the middle. I'm leaving first, I haven't finished my fighter test today. The next moment the two sides were about to come into contact, Stark immediately used the backup energy to spray energy, paused in midair for a buffer, and then landed steadily on the front of the fighter plane. Merlin's fighter plane was equipped with a jamming foil countermeasure system, so Obadiah could not lock the launch immediately. Has been sent. Don't hang out with those killers. Stark thought for a while before he realized who it was, and then he turned around, pressing against the pressure of the fighter plane's dive and sticking tightly to the nose. I saw the fighter plane suddenly accelerated, and just rushed into the fireball against him. Crack, crack. The dense frozen sound sounded like a musical instrument, and with just a few breaths, the surface of the Iron Tyrant's huge body was covered with a layer of ice crystals, and the drive system in the armor was also at low temperature. It stopped working. Soon, Merlin chased after him in a swooping fighter plane. Then, he began to check the latest news. Seeing that the sudden fighters did not attack, they just circled around them and retreated. Obadiah and Iron Overlord also heaved a sigh of relief. He looked at the time, pondered for a while, and then said, Little Dumb, send the location of the fire source to Optimus Prime and the others. Two people were left alone, kissing passionately in the ruined street. Hey, what are you going to do? Stark exclaimed suddenly. A strong push back came, and a fireball not far away suddenly appeared in front of him. Iron Man, who also flew to a high altitude, did not freeze on the surface, but the energy in his chest had been exhausted at this time. The jets on the soles of his feet and the palms of his hands in a ballet pose flickered twice before falling downwards. Go down. No, I just feel like I've walked around a searing hell. Make-up knife, John taught me. Seeing that the critical point was about to be reached, Stark said quickly. Okay. Merlin saw the icing sensor start to alarm, and knowing this, he immediately reduced the speed of the fighter plane. What are you going to do? Stark was tightly attached to the surface of the cabin and asked suspiciously. Boss, leave it to me. Happy immediately left the scene knowingly. Professor Connors, how is their progress? Okay, it's really time for you to come, otherwise I will be the headline in Apple City tomorrow. He gestured okay to Merlin in the cockpit through the glass cover. Back home, Merlin took out his notebook again. Editing information. Guys, come and see, this is the Tyrant Mk2, let's test it. Recruiting the Inclined Magic Treasure team. God, finally let me grab the super burner, let me give you the whole job. Boom, Merlin. Chapter 51. Most of the news is about the Rockstar platform and various game vehicles. Many people imitate the operations in the game, and there are not a few people who commit suicide live. The Brooklyn Scram was designed to imitate Merlin's operation at the time, but the operation failed, and it turned into a ball of fire, causing the car to crash and kill people. In addition, with the emergence of various players, the miniature electromagnetic pulse transmitter Merlin had previously made shined in the police pursuit. Although there are less than tens of thousands of players in Apple City, there are only a few hundred people who can afford limited edition special vehicles. But as long as you do the mission seriously for a period of time, you can basically afford a newbie vehicle, the armored skeleton horse. In the game against other players and the police, he also has a certain amount of self-protection power. After reading various news on the internet, Merlin yawned and was about to go to bed. There will be a big drama tomorrow, so we must recharge our batteries. That's right, he suddenly thought of something before going to bed. He took out his camera and imported the photos into his computer, and then sent them to the Daily Bugle. After seeing the photo was successfully sent, he turned off the light and fell asleep in satisfaction. Well, it would be great if Iron Man didn't go to the Middle East. She sighed a little tiredly, and then prepared to spray spider silk to continue chasing criminals, but a voice suddenly stopped her figure. As for working hard and forgetting to eat and sleep. Dee Dee, the electronic voice sounded, and a red scanning virtual projection was projected from the instrument and displayed inside the cabin. Roadblock, Roadblock, where is your little pet now? He quickly contacted Roadblock. In the last battle, his pet left a leg behind and sneaked into Sam's cell phone to locate it. Not long after the photo was shown, the data and photos of the atomic gun she was holding were played, and then her father George and Merlin appeared on the interview screen. 1 year ago, the source of fire fell into the Earth's atmosphere. The pursuing Decepticon leader Megatron was unfortunately hit by a meteorite, causing it to yaw, crashed in the North Pole, and was frozen in the polar ice for a long time, under. Spark of Cybertron. She felt that as a Spider-Man, it was too miserable to be monotonously swinging spider silk, and she should keep up with the times and have a cool spider chariot. In 1913, it was discovered in the upper reaches of the Colorado River in North America, and it is now stored in the 7th Bureau. F-22 Raptor fighter jets crawled on the square like falcons gathered together to eat. Well, it was only a few days when she was dragging her to study the serum, and the rest of the time he either slept or cheated from himself. Gwen was stunned, looking at the interview on the screen. Merlin's face was full of indignation and justice, and his face couldn't help but look a little strange. Okay. As soon as Merlin finished speaking, cheers suddenly rang out from below, and then Chief George, who looked pleased, stepped forward to speak. Gwen had been chasing the people who caused chaos in the sky early in the morning. However, with the increase of various strange flying vehicles and weapons, she gradually became unable to do what she wanted, and even the lizard people were in trouble. He put it aside for the time being. Note: Autobot leader Optimus Prime has led his personnel to the location of the fire source. Players are requested to go there as soon as possible. She remembered that Merlin had made an atomic energy gun a long time ago, and he even gave it to her. Kalis_Lee note: for the stability of Apple City, and for the safety of Uncle George and the police who protect us, I am willing to equip the police with atomic energy guns to fight criminals. And the photo is exactly the action of her drawing a gun when chasing the criminal, and there is even a sentence added. It's true. Starscream was shocked, and then quickly started the engine and flew away from the spot. She glanced at the watermark below. They're heading toward the Hoover Dam location, Roadblock quickly messaged back. Fortunately, the police are not all mediocre, and not all players are there to rob or something. Most of them are there to have some fun, and some even act as superheroes. I am sworn to death with evil. Occasionally, when he went to his modification shop, the other party would lie on the sofa leisurely eating snacks and drinking Coke, or modify his motorcycle and a yellow Chevrolet. This kid even stopped his studies for the sake of the stability of Apple City and the stability of the citizens. I angrily reprimanded him for this behavior some time ago. The next day. But now, I just want to say sorry, for us. In order to curb the chaos in Apple City, I worked hard, slept and forgot to eat, and finally perfected the atomic energy gun technology. We will specially select a Thunder tactical team for this purpose, to deal with the players who caused chaos in Apple City. But without exception, they all have a super performance vehicle and equipment. Leader Megatron. Tinder source. Seeing this inexplicable internet news, Starscream was shocked inside. In 1934, Megatron was secretly excavated under the ice of the frozen base by the 7th Bureau, codenamed NBE-1, and is now located at the Hoover Dam Underground Research Base for reverse engineering research. This is not going to work. It seems that I can only ask Merlin to help me upgrade my equipment. She squatted on the top of the building in Times Square, watching De Rosso flying around the city, scorching, Gerardo, tyrant waiting for the vehicle, and the never-ending sound of sirens and explosions on the street. I couldn't help but feel a headache. I saw a photo appearing on the big screen in Times Square, published by her #1 fan, The Horn Daily. This thing is much easier to use than spider silk. Does this count as an endorsement of the atomic energy gun? At this time, an F-22 Raptor suddenly trembled, and then the internal electronic equipment lit up on its own. And for this matter, I can only ask Merlin, who runs a modification shop, for help. Decepticons, assemble. Aviation Military Base. The mission is released. Please arrive at the mission location, awaken the Decepticon leader Megatron, seize the only fire on Cybertron, rule the Earth, and build a new home. She gritted her teeth and muttered, and then prepared to go to Merlin at night to ask for endorsement fees. In the afternoon, with all kinds of news about players flying all over the sky, a temporary evacuation news was suddenly released in Manhattan. The military quickly set up a cordon on the street and stood ready. Various armored vehicles drove into the street one after another, and special operations soldiers jumped out of them one after another. All the soldiers stood behind the makeshift cordon, looking solemnly at the front of the street, as if waiting for some huge monster to appear. Hush! In the sky, several F-22 Raptor fighter jets roared past, and the armed helicopter slowly floated around the cordon with its propellers turning. The cordon was not far from the police station, and Merlin and George, who were being interviewed, could clearly see it. The tense atmosphere of the impending storm began to spread on the streets. After the emergency evacuation notice was issued, the reporters who had originally surrounded the police station also left the scene in a panic. However, there are a few bold choices left, ready to see what big news there will be. Could it be that the military can't bear to see that they are ready to take action? George's face was a little ugly. If this is the case, then it can only show the incompetence of their police. Probably not. It's still within control now, and such a big battle should be a more dangerous thing. As he spoke, he pointed to the armed helicopters circling in the sky and the F-22 Raptors flying across the sky. This kind of armed configuration can almost start a small war. At this moment, a big guy came from across the street. It was a modified M1 main battle tank. However, the arrival of this tank seemed to make all the soldiers on guard vigilant. They all raised their weapons and waited for orders, ready to attack at any time. Seeing that it was Rockstar, the three of them looked excited. Boom! Suddenly, a violent explosion startled him. New human. The platform for this game has been set up, and it's time for NPCs and players to enter. Merlin didn't put down his hand until George and others left. He looked at Optimus Prime and Megatron fighting in the distance, and the corner of his mouth curled up. Chaos. Mess. Too messy. Incidents are happening frequently in the entire Apple City at the moment. Lizardman, Spider-Man, alien transformers, players, various monsters, ghosts and snakes appeared together as if they had made an agreement at this time. Do you think that the human body is too weak? A disease, a knife, a baseball bat, a bullet flying from nowhere, a sudden explosion, can easily make you go to God or Satan. Found the traces of Spider-Man and is heading to the Osborne Industrial Building. However, when he saw the message that popped up, he froze for a moment. But this time it was not an explosion, but a huge black jet fighter in the distance dragging a huge red and blue robot through the middle of the Empire State Building. Under the huge steel body, the humans inside the building were like a group of dolls. On the road of evolution, you will not be trapped by the pain of disease and broken limbs, and you will become a stronger and more perfect new human being. Everyone in Apple City is no stranger to the Rockstar platform, but to become a player, you not only need to be a player, you also need a certain amount of luck. Brooklyn, Black Red Scarf Gang Area. Ambulances, pickups, sports cars, tanks, police cars. The police officer hesitated for a moment while holding the report, then gritted his teeth and said, "We just received several police calls. Bathed in this heavy rain, you will abandon the weak human body and complete evolution." At the same time, the two suspected lizard men we have been tracking also appeared on the top of the Osborne Industrial Building. And such a strange situation happened in front of him. George looked puzzled when he saw this scene. There have been too many weird things happening recently. First, Iron Man frequently appeared in the Middle East, followed by the game platform that popped up in Apple City. However, before he could recover, a loud noise sounded again. Sheriff George. At this moment, a policeman walked out of the police station and walked to the side of George and the two with a dazed expression. Human change is coming. On the evening of August 2008, a heavy rain is about to sweep across the entire Apple City. Then, what is that? He looked in shock at the huge mech chasing the F-22 fighter. The whole world is like a powder keg. It seems that the next moment the fuse will be ignited and bombed, spreading to the entire Apple City. After all, there are many strange vehicles and weapons among them. Who is not greedy? Evolution. The companion next to him was surprised. On the chaotic street, 3 strong black men wearing red turbans walked lazily on the street with cigarettes in their mouths, their eyes constantly scanning the pedestrians on the street. R-Star platform announcement. George sat in the co-pilot seat, glanced at the rear through the rearview mirror, smiled and waved goodbye to Merlin, feeling better at last. Under his dull gaze, robots rose up on the street and fought with each other. The opponent spread its wings and hovered behind several fighters like a bird playing, and then jumped on top of a fighter at an accelerated speed, and a ball of fire exploded over Apple City again. But when many people were watching the live broadcast of the battle through the internet, everyone's mobile phone vibrated slightly. Delivering. Start casting. Little dumb. What's wrong? Seeing the look on his men's faces, George suddenly felt bad. Accompanied by the rapid sound of sirens, one after another police cars quickly left the gate of the police station. Some were heading for the designated evacuation area, and some were chasing criminals. What are you doing? The boss must have asked us to buy herbal medicine again. The fierce-looking bald man took out his phone and muttered dissatisfiedly. Everything around them is like a model. The military sent an emergency evacuation order. Alien creatures code-named Transformers invaded the Security Bureau and stole the country's important energy. In addition to doing our best to evacuate the crowd, we must also find a way to regain the energy code-named Cosmic Cube. In addition, the players seemed to have received some missions, and they rushed to the streets one after another. Looking up, an F-22 fighter jet turned into a ball of fire and exploded. However, when George saw the attacker, his expression was stunned. Manhattan was in chaos because of the Battle of Transformers, but the area around the Osborne Industrial Building was relatively stable, because Connors and Peter only targeted the Canary launcher on the top of the tower. Evolution is the driving force of everything, the most powerful force in the universe, and the only eternal thing. Osborne Industries plutonium transport truck stolen on 36th Street. Ding! Suddenly, as if they had agreed, the 3 people's cell phones rang at the same time. Merlin, you go with the evacuated crowd first. The whole city is not safe now. Try to follow the evacuated police to a safe place. George, who let out the depression in his heart with a long sigh, turned back and said to Merlin. Then he returned to the police station, picked up his gun and left the scene with all the police officers. Originally, the matter of Gwen Spider-Man and Lizard-Man was enough to worry him, let alone now. Natural selection, survival of the fittest. Lizard-Man or human? After reading the mission description, the 3 looked at each other. At the same time, everyone in Apple City received such a message. Choose a lizard man who is more powerful, can be reborn from broken limbs, and has stronger vitality. According to the mission description, come to the empty street at the designated time to accept the baptism of evolution and join the new human camp. Humans who still choose to be rational will hide in the house and wait until the reign of evolution ends to join the human camp. Apart from the black community, the ones who responded the most to this were the various hospitals. Needless to say, the black group, in the eyes of many people in the Eagle Country, is synonymous with chaos, brainless orangutans. Black people have long-standing criminal records, and there are many unrecorded crimes. Therefore, among the choices of new humans, most of them chose to become lizardmen with regeneration ability without hesitation. Many of them want to replace humans and become the new rulers of the world without suffering discrimination. The hospital is also very clear. For many patients, they have had enough of lying on the hospital bed and suffering from chemotherapy. Many patients with severed limbs, disabled and paralyzed in bed also see hope. Bim, take me to the roof. A middle-aged man lying on the hospital bed with a pale face and drips said decisively to the nurse next to him. But, sir, the nurse wanted to persuade him, but was interrupted directly. Is it raining? On the street, a pale woman wearing hospital clothes looked at the green drops on her palm and murmured softly. Facing the golden afterglow, Merlin was sitting on the edge of the roof with a bottle of Coke, his legs dangling casually. Also shrouded are the long-awaited people on the street. Pattering. Amidst the dense rain, the disabled patients suddenly fell to the ground and struggled in pain. They only felt the itching in the incomplete areas, as if something was about to grow. The same was true on the streets and squares. Groups of black people and people in hospital uniforms walked to empty areas and waited quietly. New humanity. I want to become a new humanity. I want those idiots to go to hell. Malik, I'm going to take the evolutionary bath, what about you? A man sitting in a wheelchair with only his upper body asked the man without arms. It is good. Send me to the roof. I don't want to die. I want to live. I want to evolve into a new human. The middle-aged man on the hospital bed paused, with a firm expression on his face. Not enough. Now, he had new hope. Stab. Malik, wake up. We fought hard for this country, but what did we get when we came back? My wife is messing with others, and my daughter doesn't recognize you as her father. They felt the power of baptism. There are many people who want to join the Lizardman camp through bathing evolution. Some do it because of their character and skin color, some do it for redemption, and some do it for revenge. The same is true for students and social animals who have suffered from oppression and bullying. Redemption. Groups of people walked out one after another on the rooftops of buildings, looking at the sky as if they were waiting for something. Under the illumination of the city's neon lights, green raindrops fell like thin swords, gradually forming a green rain curtain. The rain curtain became larger and faster, and the entire city was enveloped in it. The afterglow of the setting sun illuminates the entire Apple City in a golden color, and the fire clouds gradually merge into one in the sky. As long as everyone becomes lizard people, the current human beings will become old human beings. The man lying on the hospital bed is a rich man of a company, but no matter how much money he has, he is facing an incurable terminal illness. They can only hopelessly wait for death to come. Groups of gorgeous green fireworks exploded over the city one after another, covering the dark night with a layer of miserable green. On the street, whether they are black people, sick people, or bored people, they are like fanatical believers at the moment, enjoying the baptism of the green rain curtain with their heads up. Come on, let's accept the bath of evolution together. Even becoming a lizard man is better than the waste body we have now. This down-to-earth feeling fascinated him. Of course, some people may be too boring or members of some sects. Boom. As long as we are determined, no matter whether it is true or false, we will always try. Next came Osborne Industries in Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens. Likewise, the same thing is happening in other wards. The players also received the same faction selection task, but basically they all chose the human faction. Most of them were afraid that they would not even be able to play the game after becoming lizardmen and losing their brains. When the last golden afterglow shining on Apple City was like the moment when the gate of heaven closed, a firework suddenly rose from the Statue of Liberty's torch and shot straight into the sky. The night is coming. Merlin took a sip of his Coke, looked at the fighting Cybertronians and the pedestrians waiting quietly on the street. His immature and harmless face was illuminated by the fiery red halo. A look of joy was revealed. Bang, bang, ah, ah. A disabled man who had lost his legs suddenly stood up. Green horn began to appear on his face, and his pupils changed from human to cold vertical ones. It worked. It really worked. My legs have grown. He didn't care about the change in appearance, but looked at his newly grown legs excitedly. On the contrary, many people fled back to their homes or hid in hotels with nervous expressions. His body gradually expanded, and his long legs began to grow sharp claws, gradually becoming a lizard man. The originally noisy players also found shelter from the rain and waited quietly. No need, I won't become a monster. The armless man was a little moved, but in the end he shook his head firmly. Boom. The chaotic and disorderly Apple City suddenly fell into silence at this moment. Except for the battlefield of Transformers, all the streets were quiet. Hearing his companion's persuasion, the armless man was also a little moved. Thinking that his wife followed his brother, and even his daughter looked at him like a stranger, his expression gradually became firmer. I don't want my daughter to see his dad become a giant lizard. This evolution may be a disaster for the whole city, but it is a dawn for some terminally ill and desperate patients. God, help me. Stab, stab. There was a sound of leather tearing, and under the green rain, tall lizardmen tore their clothes and rose up from the street. Their icy vertical pupils looked up at the sky, and the wildness that erupted in their bodies made them endure. Can't help opening his mouth and roaring. Ho ho ho. The roar of the lizardman resounded in Apple City one after another, and the full moon quietly rising in the night sky was also dyed a layer of miserable green at some point. The residents hiding in the houses looked at the alienated lizardmen on the street through the windows, and their eyes flashed with serious horror. But the players are now excitedly looking forward to it, eagerly waiting for the end of the baptism of evolution. What happened? Bumblebee looked up at the green rain curtain falling from the sky, and then looked at the seriously injured warrior on the ground. Under the baptism of the rain curtain, he turned into a burly lizard man in the blink of an eye, jumping around, stood up. Optimus Prime and Megatron, who were still fighting, were a little confused by the sudden change and subconsciously stopped fighting. Under their watchful eyes, the originally weak human beings have become burly and powerful at this moment, and the streets are full of alienated lizardmen roaring up to the sky. Under the green rain, a strange, crazy and ominous atmosphere began to permeate the entire city. On the roof, green raindrops slapped on the surface of the black umbrella and dripped along the edge. Merlin stood on the edge of the rooftop, holding an umbrella with one hand, as if appreciating a work of art, quietly gazing at the green picture. It's wonderful, he murmured softly. At this time, a red figure flew across the green rain curtain and flew in front of Merlin. Merlin, great, I finally found you. I thought you had turned into a lizard man too. Arcee's back was emitting blue energy, suspended in front of Merlin, and the bright red was very vivid in the green rain, conspicuous. She finally breathed a sigh of relief after seeing Merlin holding an umbrella. Have you obtained the fire source? Merlin asked after recovering from the joy. It has already been obtained, and it is now with Bumblebee and Sam, but it should not be handed over to you for research for the time being. The Decepticons do not know where they got the news of the fire source, and they also awakened the frozen Megatron. Come here. Bumblebee and the others are being pursued. Arcee was a little annoyed. She was able to get the source of fire smoothly, but she didn't expect to be attacked by the Decepticons halfway. And Megatron also woke up. At present, only the leader Optimus Prime can temporarily resist, but I don't know how long it can last. The situation is very unfavorable to them, and now such a strange change has occurred. I wonder if it will have any impact on them. Then wait for a while, I can't go away now. Merlin shook the umbrella in his hand. Arcee nodded. It's good that you're fine. Because of the sudden green rain, the whole city was quiet for a while. A group of S.H.I.E.L.D. members including Natasha and Hawkeye also had to find a place to shelter from the rain, waiting for the end of this evolution. As all the people who had undergone the baptism of evolution completed their evolution and became lizardmen, the pattering green rain curtain gradually became thinner until calm was restored. Under the bright moonlight, Apple City with flashing neon lights was revealed again, but the empty streets and squares were covered in green. Zzzz, zzz. Suddenly, a signal electromagnetic sound resounded throughout Apple City. Immediately afterwards, all the advertising screens flickered, and a page jumped out. Games start. The source of new humans, the Tower of Evolution. In Apple City, there are a total of 6 evolution towers. They are the beginning of all evolution, but they can also be the source of the end of everything. Melon Shaw and Gwen Stacy, the two of them hold the regenerative serum in their hands, which is also the last hope of mankind's victory. Conversely, it is also the source of blocking the evolution of new humans. Human player mission released. Please find Merlin Shaw and Gwen Stacy, obtain the regeneration serum, break the tower, release the serum, and take back your home. New human players released. Please find Merlin Shaw and Gwen Stacy and kill them. Find Professor Curtis Kurt Connors and Peter Parker, obtain regeneration potions, guard the tower, expand the new human camp, and complete the plan of reptiles to dominate the land. Humanity. New human. For humans, the new humans are ferocious and dirty reptiles. For new humans, humans are creatures that are about to be eliminated by the times. The battle for the tower, who will reach the top in the end? Become the ruler of this land. Come on, let us try to witness. After the mission description was completed, the portraits of Merlin, Gwen, Connors, and Peter were all displayed on various big screens in Apple City and home TVs. After playing it in a loop 3 times, basically everyone understood what the mission request explained. Merlin Shaw and Gwen Stacy hold the serum that can relieve the mutation of new humans. As long as it is dropped on the tower, the city can be restored. Although the lizard people's brains are not working well after the mutation, their temperament has only changed drastically, and their basic cognition is still there. Connors and Peter are key figures in the development of their new humanity. The tower is also an important equipment needed for their development and must be closely protected to prevent human occupation. Of course, if the 2 high school students Merlin and Gwen could be killed directly, it would prevent them from degenerating into humans again. Ho ho ho. One after another roars rang out over Apple City. All the lizard men on the street seemed to be rioting, rampaging between the street and the square, heading for the nearest tower. At the same time, during this period, they all sent a group of people to find the target person. Among the human beings, the players also cheered and rode the vehicle onto the street, eager to start the game. The police and the military who arrived looked for Merlin and Gwen. Boom boom. The roar of the explosion suddenly broke the silence of Apple City. A player carrying an RPG aimed at the lizard man. The roaring missile turned into a ball of fire and enveloped the lizard man. One by one, Deroso, Tyrant Mk2, and rocket packs began to take off. On the ground, Gerardo, Centero, Vigilante, Superburn, World Destroyer, APC half-track. All kinds of strange armed vehicles and motorcycles flooded the streets. There's even a recently released Con Jolly tank that roams the streets. Megatron and the others also recovered from the green rain and continued to snatch the source of fire. At this moment, the powder keg of Apple City was really detonated. Merlin, Gwen, George, who was rushing to the Osborne mansion, looked at the 2 people in the task announcement, and his face instantly became ugly. These 2 people have been mysterious recently, and he thought they were going on a date. For this reason, he and his wife were relieved. But I didn't expect the 2 of them to do such a thing. Merlin, are you talking about? RC asked blankly after finishing the task on the rooftop. I don't have twin brothers. Merlin put away the umbrella, and replied jokingly. There was no panic on his face, but a little eager to try. Boom, boom, boom. The roar of engines and explosions came one after another on the street, and the burly lizard man was drowned on the spot. However, when the gunpowder smoke dissipated, the wounds on the scorched lizard man healed at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the broken limbs also grew out. After walking down a few steps, the injuries on his body were basically intact. Except for the tattered clothes on his body that were burned off, it seemed like nothing had happened. Bang! The characteristic of burning bullets erupted, and the lizard man who had just recovered instantly became a huge burning man, and the smell of burnt meat permeated. However, what shocked the player was that the opponent did not fall down because of this. Instead, he let out a mad roar, and then threw him to the ground with flames all over his body. Stab! The player who was standing there was instantly torn in half. The bloody scene instantly filled the entire street, and this scene also successfully scared some surrounding players. Only at this moment did they realize that this game didn't seem to be that simple. Boom boom boom. Groups of fireballs spread out again. The Deraso convoy roared past in the sky, and countless missiles poured out, covering almost all the lizard men in the entire block. A player looked at the Mk2 rifle in his hand and was silent for a while. Well, to be more precise, it is a bit difficult for players like them who have too little Krypton gold. Let's go to Osborne Industries first. I'm going to make the serum. Merlin turned to RC, who was still a little dazed, and said, "Oh, good." RC came back to her senses, nodded quickly, and then the mechanical body began to twist, and quickly turned into a Ducati motorcycle and stopped in front of Merlin. After Merlin mounted RC, he started the atomic engine, switched to flying motorcycle mode and left the rooftop. Looking from the sky, one can still see flying vehicles flying among the city buildings, heading towards the Osborne Industrial Building. Since there is a competition for tall towers, the Osborne Industrial Building is the one. Just as he left the rooftop and was about to take off, a sound of piercing the air suddenly exploded in the sky, and along with a white light pierced the night sky, Iron Man arrived at the scene. Merlin, wait a minute, where are you going? Stark hovered in front of Merlin in a ballet pose, and asked with his mask open to reveal his cheeks. Of course, go to Osborne Industries to make more serum and end this crisis. To be honest, I'm not used to being the savior for the first time. Merlin pointed in the direction of the Osborne Industrial Building. It's not easy being a savior. Now the whole city is looking for you and a girl named Gwen. By the way, do you know where Gwen is? I checked and found that you are very good friends. Oh, there's also a girl named Hannah. You don't want to be in two different places, are you? That's great. Stark seemed to get more and more excited as he spoke, showing a gossip expression. Merlin, when did this guy learn Spider-Man's talkative skills? I'm enough alone, and Gwen doesn't have to worry, she won't be found. Merlin shook his head and replied. Why? Hearing that Merlin was so determined, Stark couldn't help but froze for a moment. You can ask her. Merlin tilted his head and gestured behind him. Stark watched closely, and a woman with burgundy curly hair in a tight black leather jacket was driving the Tyrant Mk2 towards them at a high speed. Black Widow Natasha. She is a special agent of the Department of National Defense Strategy, a department that specializes in dealing with alien supernatural events, is also a player. Agent. Stark nodded clearly. For such a big matter, it is normal for agents to respond in advance. Sure enough, there was no one in the last team that was easy. Hey, two, do you mind forming a team? Natasha stopped beside the two and said with a smile. Of course, no problem. Before Merlin opened his mouth, Stark agreed. Maybe after the battle, we can have some wonderful encounters. At this time, Stark didn't forget to pick up girls. But does Gwen's matter have anything to do with her? Stark asked doubtfully after teasing her. Gwen, I know about her, don't worry, she should have arrived at the Osborne Industrial Building before all of us. Natasha said pointedly. Since the last mission to Afghanistan to rescue Stark, she began to investigate the relationship between Merlin and the platform, and by the way, she knew that Gwen was Spider-Man. Gwen is Spider-Man. For an agent, it only takes a little calculation to know. Stark wanted to speak, but Merlin suddenly patted RC as if he saw something. RC, use the electromagnetic gun. The source of the fire is going to be taken away. On the battlefield of Transformers, Sam fled embarrassingly on the street under the cover of the Hornet and Eagle Sauce troops. However, on the way to escape, unfortunately, it was affected by a missile from Starscream, and he fell heavily into the ruins holding the backpack wrapped in the source of fire. At this time, Megatron just knocked Optimus Prime to the ground with a blast of energy and rushed to Sam. Boy, give me back the source of fire. That's our thing, Megatron said, bending down and reaching out to grab the backpack from Sam's hand. Sam watched the opponent's huge metal face and sharp metal claws approaching constantly, tightly holding the fire source in his hand. No matter what, the source of fire cannot be handed over to the other party. As long as the other party gets the source of fire, the entire Earth will become a world of Transformers, and human society will also be in crisis. But at this moment, Optimus Prime and the others had no time to support him, so he could only close his eyes in despair. Seeing that Megatron's huge metal palm was about to touch the backpack, a railgun suddenly hit his palm from the side. Boom! Zzzz! A weak electric arc flashed in the air, and a blackened hole was pierced through Megatron's palm on the spot. Under the huge impact, Megatron's huge body staggered a few steps. Ah, RC. Megatron covered his palms and looked in the direction of the attack with a look of disbelief. An icy square electromagnetic gun tube popped out from the side of RC at some point, with a vacuum above it and a blue arc flickering in the middle. While he was shocked, RC had quickly rushed over. Stab it! Merlin flipped his palm, revealing the spider silk launcher on his wrist. He pressed it with his finger, and a thread of spider silk instantly shot out and stuck to the backpack in Sam's arms. No! Megatron roared angrily and stretched out his hand to stop him. But it was obviously too late. The fire source was pulled by the spider thread and passed by it. The spider silk bounced back, and Merlin in the air took advantage of the situation and hugged the backpack in his arms. He opened the zipper and took a look, and a dark Rubik's Cube energy block came into his eyes. Stark, who was following up, glanced at Merlin with a strange expression, and his eyes paused for a moment on his chest. "What are you looking at?" As if sensing the other person's unreasonable gaze, Merlin put his backpack on his back and turned to look at him. "You should know what I'm looking at. I didn't expect that the Spider-Man who lives in Apple City would be you. Everyone thinks that Spider-Man is a female hero, but the fact is, a man disguised as a woman. No wonder no one doubts your identity. You young people still know how to play." Stark pointed at the spider silk launcher on Merlin's wrist and complained. "PFF'd." Natasha suddenly couldn't help laughing. "Merlin." His face darkened and he explained, "Please, how can my body withstand such high-intensity movements? It was given to me by Spider-Man. I have a good relationship with her." Merlin didn't think that his small body could jump down from the building like Gwen, and he could still squirt spider silk to stabilize his body and continue to swing. "It's true." Stark raised his brows, "but Merlin might be hiding something deep, maybe. Megatron and the others are chasing us, let's go." At this moment, the bumblebee on the ground waved and shouted. At some point, the Starscream that was fighting with it has turned into an F-22 Raptor and flew into the sky. "The source of the fire is in the hands of RC and that human being, grab them." Megatron tore the seriously injured Jazz into pieces and jumped into the air, instantly turning into a huge jet-black Cybertron jet fighter. He whizzed away in the direction of Merlin and the others in the air. "Let's go, I'll stop them." The two Decepticons who were chasing after Stark looked dignified, and quickly closed their masks. After speaking, they turned into a white light and rushed towards Megatron and the others. "Get away, Bug." Looking at the oncoming Iron Man, Megatron snorted disdainfully and fired out an energy cannon. Boom! Stark dexterously dodged sideways, and then the launch port popped up on his shoulder, and a series of miniature missiles sprayed out like flowers. Boom boom boom. However, after these missiles hit Megatron, they exploded like pieces of firecrackers. Only sparks were seen, without causing the slightest damage. Phew! The huge Cybertron jet fighter broke through the faint gunpowder smoke, without even looking at Stark, and chased straight in the direction of Merlin and RC. Stark. He looked helplessly at Megatron who was going away. The nearest enemies were all super classy. Needless to say, his Uncle Iron Overlord yesterday, if it wasn't for Merlin, he might be gone. "It's a good day today, I can't even do any damage." Phew! Merlin suddenly turned the steering wheel of the motorcycle to shift the direction, and an energy bomb whizzed past him. At the same time, the radar on the head of the locomotive suddenly issued an alarm, and the laser beam shot out accordingly. Boom boom boom. Under the laser sweep, several locked missiles were intercepted and exploded in midair. Megatron's huge metal body was like a huge falcon. As it got closer and closer, both Merlin and Natasha could feel the pressure of the giant thing. After Starscream fired the missile, he fought with Stark. "Merlin, if this continues, we will eventually be overtaken. We don't have an advantage in the air." Natasha turned her head to look at Megatron who was approaching extremely fast, and said in a solemn tone. Her meaning is obvious, to go to the ground to take advantage of the many buildings. Even though RC has been modified, her speed is still not enough to face Megatron. After all, the gap between fire and technology is not easy to equalize. Merlin glanced at the Megatron fighter that was gradually approaching from behind, and then at the chaotic crowd of lizards on the ground street. There is Megatron in the sky, but when it reaches the ground there are endless lizards and Decepticon transformers. At this moment, Optimus Prime and his party of Transformers suddenly appeared below. He breathed a sigh of relief, and made a decision in his mind. Go down. Merlin pressed down, and RC swooped down directly towards the city with her. Being caught up in the air is a matter of time, but after arriving on the ground, the variables will increase. Bang! RC shook slightly, and then the two tires landed firmly on the street. Natasha hovered in midair, escorting Merlin. The moment Merlin landed, the lizard men walking on the streets and climbing above the buildings also saw him. That's Merlin Shaw. Melon Shaw. The guy from the mission. That's him. You can't be wrong. He has the serum in his hand. He must not be allowed to reach the tower. Roar. A lizard man climbing on the building like a monkey suddenly looked up to the sky and roared. Immediately afterwards, like a chain reaction, the roar spread rapidly. In the buildings and streets, one lizard man looked up to the sky and roared. With one response after another, the whole street was filled with the calls of the lizard men one after another. Ho ho ho. Notice. The human Merlin shout was marked by the new human camp. On the billboards and various communication devices, the scene of the scene was broadcast live immediately. Ah, Merlin grinned as he felt the dense cold and violent gazes around him. Pairs of green lights were densely packed on the dark street, and the barbaric and dull roars were like thunderstorms. Into the lizard den, shadows shrouded the sky, and Megatron also transformed into a human form and fell rapidly toward him like a meteorite. His huge body seemed to crush him. Hey, this is something to play. Seeing the eyes of the lizard men around him and Megatron above him, his pupils began to shrink under the extreme excitement, and the adrenal hormone in his body soared. Buzzing. RC seemed to feel Merlin's mood, the engine in her body roared, and the rear wheels rubbed against the spot. The shadow expanded rapidly, and the surrounding lizard men could even feel the whistling sound of the airflow. It stabbed. In the lightning flash, RC's front wheel suddenly tilted up. Like an arrow off the string, it turned into a red phantom and rushed out. Boom. Megatron's huge body fell onto the street, and the hard cement road under his feet shattered. And RC had already rushed to a group of lizardmen with Merlin. The distance between the two sides was getting closer and closer, and a lizard man finally couldn't help but rushed forward lying on the ground. RC, clear a path. Facing the surging group of lizardmen, Merlin showed no fear and turned the accelerator to the lowest limit. Crack. The electromagnetic gun launcher popped out from RC's side again, and the electromagnetic arc in the barrel flashed and began to charge. When the energy reaches the critical point, an electromagnetic light cannon pops up instantly. Beep. A white light flashed, and the lizardmen blocking the front were instantly evaporated, clearing a passage, and there was still a faint arc of electricity in the air. Roar. The affected lizardmen couldn't help wailing. Some were rubbed against their arms and melted on the spot, some had half their bodies cut off, and even worse, only limbs remained. Wherever the electromagnetic gun passed, there were pieces of broken arms and limbs. Merlin lowered his body and drove RC into the passage. But soon, when he was about to rush out, the lizardmen on the periphery closed up again like a tide, and rushed towards Merlin. Merlin stepped on the pedal with a little force, and RC underneath him tacitly raised her hips and threw Merlin into the air. Oh, shit. Looking at the green scene in front of him, Stark, who was hovering above the team, couldn't help but swear. On the street, headed by Merlin driving RC, Optimus Prime, Bumblebee and other Transformers gathered together and turned into vehicles, following closely behind them. RC, who had finished retreating from the enemy, transformed into a locomotive again after landing, and accelerated to catch Merlin before he landed. However, what stunned him was that the originally agile Starscream had no intention of evading at this moment, and directly rushed towards him with two palm cannons on his shoulder. Look and see her eyes, they glow. Just now, Stark Spider was seriously injured by the blast from the Bumblebee, but Stark's damage was negligible. But I have to say that Merlin's approach suited his wishes. As Merlin's progress increased, more and more lizardmen joined the pursuit team, gradually forming a green wave on the street, making it appear crowded. At this time, Iron Man in the sky quickly chased him, and just ran into Starscream head-on. Merlin glanced back. In addition to Megatron, the helicopters were dizzy, the tanks were noisy, and the police car barricades and other Decepticon members also followed up. And it was the Bumblebee that launched the attack. When he turned around suspiciously, Starscream had already disappeared into the sky with jet-black gunpowder smoke, leaving Megatron and the others behind without the slightest pause. Buzzing. The roar of the engine sounded from both sides of the intersection, and then Optimus Prime, Bumblebee and other Transformers vehicles merged into the main road from both sides, and followed Merlin. What's the name of the song? Stark subconsciously complained as he listened to the music playing. Have you been ignored again? However, before he could be proud, an electromagnetic gun hit him from the side. Woohoo, the feeling is coming. Call out. I think we should play some music at this time. Merlin said suddenly, feeling the teams gathering behind him. Stark. Just when Stark was biting his hands and crossing his chest to prepare for the impact, the other party passed him quickly. Click, click. Starscream quickly changed his form and blocked the center of the intersection in front of Merlin. Where are we going now? Whoops. Suddenly, there was a whistling sound in the sky, and Starscream's F-22 Raptor fighter jet quietly appeared above him at some point. RC, hand over the fire source. You have nowhere to escape. He slid back on the ground for a certain distance, then raised his arms and threatened. Oh my god, you're still in the mood to play music. Without thinking too much, he immediately raised his hands and fired 2 palm bombardments. A series of movements seemed to have evolved countless times, and they were extremely smooth. Wonderful cooperation. After breaking through the lizard man's obstruction, Merlin sat back on RC and praised him. It's still the Osborne Industrial Building, where most of the gamers and lizard men gather. Merlin drove RC to avoid the lizard man pounced in the air, and replied casually. Buzz. The engine roared, and the moment Merlin was thrown away, RC transformed into a humanoid form, with her hands on the ground, and the wheels carried by her legs twisted in a whirlwind. A circular afterimage flashed past, and along with a series of dull blows, the lizard man who came together flew out instantly. Dong dong dong. This kid is a bit like a savior. The leader and the others are here too, RC said with a sigh of relief. On the cross street ahead, they saw countless lizardmen blocking them densely, staring at them with cold eyes. Stark and Natasha quickly merged into the air of the team. Natasha also looked at the scene in front of her with a solemn expression. In an urban environment, their flying advantage is greatly limited, and they have to keep an eye on the source of fire. The moment they fly into the air and lose sight, if the opponent divides their forces, no one knows whose hands the source of fire will be. It seems to be a bit too much. Merlin stopped the car with one foot on the ground, and grinned in embarrassment at the scene in front of him. The roar of the engine resounded through the streets, like explosive electronic sounds, overpowering the roars of the surrounding lizard men. The heavy truck with red tattoos, the bumblebee with yellow muscle lines, the thick ambulance like an armored vehicle, the big black truck with iron skin. When Stark looked down, he immediately raised his eyebrows clearly. Boom, stupid slaves, get out of my way and don't block the road. With the sound of heavy objects being trampled, Megatron from behind rushed into the group of lizards with a furious expression, like a farmer entering a flock of chickens, and pushed the lizards away. The man casually moved aside and stared closely at Merlin in front of him. A sharp electronic sound with a drum beat soon rang out on the street. Soon, however, the music had to be paused. Oh, no, I'm leaving first. Starscream was already cunning and timid, bullying the weak and fearing the strong. When he saw the Autobots rushing over, he transformed into a fighter plane and flew away from the spot without even thinking about it. Bang! After the lizard man landed, he quickly disappeared into the group of chasing lizard men, and followed the large army to catch up again. Bang bang bang. Okay. Of course RC complied with his request and played Midnight City. And in the rear, Megatron and the others stepped on their feet, mingling among the lizard crowd like a few elite monsters. While he was dazed, the other party had already come in front of him. Iron Man, Black Widow, Autobots. Boom. The ground trembled, and the lizardmen and Megatron behind them also caught up. Buzz buzz. The stun helicopter rotated its propellers and hovered above them. They are surrounded. Probably not big enough. Merlin pondered for a while, and came to such a conclusion, then reached out and touched the fire source in the backpack. Kukukukiki. Optimus Prime and the others quickly transformed into tall Autobots, surrounded Merlin in a circle to protect them, and looked solemnly at the Lizardmen and Decepticon members who came one after another in the surrounding streets. Crack, crack, weapons popped out one after another, and they became vigilant. Where are the platform players? I think we have encountered a hell-level difficulty level and need support. Stark hovered in the sky, his tone relaxed but depressing. There are so many lizardmen, he is also terrified. It should take some time. My location has been exposed in the whole city now. I will come sooner or later. Because the lizardmen discovered him first, and there were a large number of them, it was easy to separate some people to come to surround him. As for the players, let's not talk about the number, and not everyone likes to play the main line. Now many players don't know where to drive a car or hang around with a sniper rifle. The military and members of our department are also coming here to support, but... Natasha looked around, and then at several members of her team. The meaning was self-evident. Natasha was about to fall, and the tyrant quickly changed back to the vehicle form to catch her. Wow, quack 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 quack. When the robots saw groups of lizardmen on the street, they rushed up angrily with the weapons they produced. The lizard people lowered their heads and groped their bodies in a panic, but there were no injuries. Pa-ta! The source of fire paused in the sky for a while, and after the burst of energy, it fell back into the backpack in Merlin's arms again. It's like having a life of its own, consistent with the biometallic characteristics of the alien transformer's body. At this time, there was a sudden burst of machine gun fire and the chaotic sound of shells roaring in the nearby shopping mall. The huge energy electromagnetic wave suddenly exploded centered on the source of the fire seed, spreading rapidly towards the surroundings in a circular shape like a hurricane, and did not stop until it reached the edge of Manhattan. The burst of energy from the fire source caused the surrounding lizardmen to stop subconsciously, and looked at the fire source in the middle suspiciously. Chaotic species. At the same time, the lizard people who were still in doubt suddenly found that the surrounding vehicles, vending machines and other electrical appliances suddenly flickered with sparks, and then transformed into a messy robot. And the tinder energy in the body is ammunition for them. Boom. He decided that when he went back, he must research an anti-transformers armor. This battle was really aggrieved. Merlin didn't answer him, but threw the fire source into the air forcefully. We'll wait until we fail. We need to make the situation a little more chaotic now. Merlin got off the car to the ground, and took out the fire source cube from his bag. The TV that was broadcasting the news at home suddenly twisted into a violent robot, the bread machine in the kitchen, the induction cooker, the juicer, the mobile phone. Hey, Master, it's an honor to be one with you. Hey, boy, what are you going to do? TP and the others were shocked when they saw Merlin's next move. What are you going to do? RC turned into a human form and asked suspiciously. The surrounding was quiet, a little dazed. If there is no pursuit of Megatron and the aliens, they can still escape after they take off. Unlike Stark's suit, though, he doesn't seem to be able to speak yet. Let me help. Merlin raised the laser gun and pulled the trigger on the fire source in the sky. The product of the energy overflowing from the fire source, a mechanical species generated by the disorderly and chaotic Cybertron technology. Faction. Chaos. The gap in quantity and strength is too great, and they really may not be able to survive until then. If we fail in the end, please put the fire source on my chest, and I will disappear on the Earth together with it. Optimus Prime, who had been silent all this time, suddenly turned around and said. Added new races and chaotic species in Manhattan. Many technologies on the Earth are produced through reverse research on Megatron, so after being affected by the fire source, they will become members of the Decepticons and automatically possess weapons. Ah, such a big movement, is there no harm? Stark in the sky staggered and stabilized his figure, looking at the peaceful scene around him, a little puzzled. Boom! An explosion rushed out with the shattered glass of the door, followed by densely packed robots pouring out of it. No, if he gets it, the electrical machines on the entire Earth will become cybertronic biological robots, which is much more troublesome than the lizardmen in a city. Natasha immediately shook her head and said resolutely, Mr. Stark, your battle uniform seems to have undergone some changes. Except for the surrounding area, the entire Manhattan area was affected by the energy of the fire source. What's going on? I saw the Mk2 Tyrant under Natasha's crotch suddenly lost control, and with a burst of sparks flying, a white robot with a purple circular energy port in the center of its chest appeared in the sky. Then what should we do? We can't last long. Stark couldn't do anything about it. As an agent, she has already received information about Transformers from the 7th District, so she also understands the importance of the source of fire. And the vehicle technology produced by Merlin is based on the system game platform, and is bound to the R-Star subsystem, so after being affected, it will not be destroyed like a violent lunatic. Leader. Tin Pie and the others were shocked. What? Stark's eyes widened suddenly, and then a strange voice came from the armor. At this time, there was a sudden exclamation from the side. Boom boom boom. Phew. The red laser shot out straight, hitting the surface of the fire source in an instant. A small Q-version cartoon Iron Man broke away from the shoulder of the armor like liquid metal, and said hello to Stark. Da da da. Everyone's electronic devices instantly turned into violent despots Cybertronians. In addition, after the players' vehicles were affected, they also turned into bio-robots, but they did not destroy randomly like the Decepticon Cybertron, but cooperated with the players. In an instant, a huge burst of energy burst out from the fire source. "What's in your bag? Can you give it back to them?" Tony asked while looking at the backpack in Merlin's arms. "Oh, my God." Looking at the little Iron Man on his shoulder, Stark didn't know how to express his mood for a while. Destroy. Confusion. All are going to die. Congratulations to Manhattan players for upgrading their vehicles. From now on, they will no longer be cold vehicles, but your closest comrades in arms. News of the new camp quickly spread in Apple City, but for players outside Manhattan, the news of vehicle upgrades was even more important to them. What? Vehicle upgrade, mechanical life form. Autobot, why didn't I? Oh, no, that's not fair. Why are only players in Manhattan available? Hey, it's limited to Manhattan players. Who told you to wander around without participating in the main protection serum? Ha ha ha, my armed Patton turned into a huge robot, so cool. The same goes for my Pegasi taser. I bought it just for its looks. I didn't expect that one day it would turn into a mecha. So do my vigilantes. Photos, 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 photos. Due to regional reasons, although the people in Manhattan have changed their temperaments after they became lizardmen, their shrewdness has not diminished in the slightest. Therefore, most of them are planned actions, able to use their own advantages, and unite together. On the platform forum, players in Manhattan cheered and frantically showed off their upgraded biological vehicles as if they were celebrating the new year. Cough. Just kidding. Dude, your vigilante mech is so cool. Boom. Natasha shattered a lizard man with the last blasting bullet. Just as he put away his rifle, a lizard rushed in front of him. Roar. Groups of lizards frantically surrounded him like zombies from the surrounding streets, staring at Merlin in the middle with their icy vertical pupils. Merlin turned around and saw that the sharp claws of a lizard man had already arrived in front of him. Da da da. In this way, the Chaos species broke up the formation of the lizard group and weakened the lizardman encirclement. Optimus Prime faced Megatron head-on, while Bumblebee harassed him with an electromagnetic pulse cannon, blocking Megatron's footsteps for a while. In terms of energy, it is more stable than the superconducting graphene battery of the system. Although the lizardmen are made of flesh and blood, their strength is terrifying and they possess a strong regenerative ability. They are not to be outdone in the face of a large number of chaotic species. Even the weapons transformed by electrical appliances can only tickle them. Even if the firepower is stronger, the injuries they suffer can recover quickly. Reported. Bang. Stark, on Merlin's right, kicked a lizardman flying with a heavy kick, then stretched out his arm, and fired the palm cannon and laser cannon side by side, blowing away several other lizardmen who rushed over. And Natasha landed on the ground at this time, and looked at the tyrant who had transformed into a white transformer with a face full of surprise. Natasha's complexion changed, and she immediately put her hands on her chest. Boom boom boom. Well, good job, boy. Ironhide praised, and then followed Optimus Prime and the others to rush towards the Decepticon members. On the Transformers side, because there was no Starscream, Megatron challenged Optimus Prime and Bumblebee alone, and Ironhide and Ambulance faced Noisy and Dizzy. Upstairs, I found your location, right in Brooklyn, wait for me. Stark, Natasha and his tyrant, and RC stayed in place to protect Merlin. Natasha on the left is holding a Mk2 rifle, burning bullets, explosive bullets, metal bullets. All kinds of special bullets poured out, hitting the eyes of the lizardmen precisely, and the tyrant guarded the side and forced all the lizardmen close retreat. A mechanical body, with different sizes and different weapons. In contrast, in Brooklyn, most of the people who evolved into lizardmen were black people. After turning into lizardmen, they were stronger and more savage, with only destruction in their heads. Therefore, the lizard crowd that originally surrounded Merlin and his party instantly fell into chaos, and the chaotic lizard people were entangled together. The situation was so stalemate. After the electromagnetic gun is fully charged, a beam of light will sweep away a large area of enemies. Bang! The tyrant blocked the lizard man's claws, but a whistling sound suddenly came from below. The three people forming a triangle will form a wall. However, it didn't take long for Natasha to run out of ammunition. Well, this is really a good thing. Stark stretched out his arm, and a laser energy weapon popped out. Optimus Prime and the others blocked Megatron's footsteps, and Stark and the others also cleared a defensive circle to protect Merlin. There are not a few players who are fighting each other, and sometimes you should admit it or you have to admit it. After all, there is no Los Santos hospital on the real platform. Bang! A thick lizard tail suddenly appeared in front of her and threw it away. And the players in other areas looked at the handsome Autobot in the photo, and their teeth were about to be gritted with envy. Merlin, who was protected in the middle, was holding an electromagnetic rifle and launched an indiscriminate attack on the surrounding lizardmen. In front of RC, she carried a long electromagnetic pulse cannon on her shoulders. Countless missiles flew out of her body like flowers, directly covering the lizardmen in the smoke of the explosion. But with the addition of the chaotic species, the situation in Manhattan, where the lizard family was originally the only one, gradually became balanced. This electromagnetic rifle was not made according to the system, but was made with Stark's cold fusion reactor as the core. As the most conspicuous and numerous race on the street, lizardmen are of course their primary target. The surrounding lizardmen rushed towards Merlin like a group of crawlers, but they were all blocked by Stark and the others, forming a circular vacuum area. Don't be arrogant. When the Avengers and the evil ones come out, I will kill you. As a result, there was a vacancy in the defense, and immediately a few lizardmen broke through the defense and rushed towards Merlin. Merlin, RC beside her exclaimed. Phew. Seeing that Merlin was about to be pierced by sharp claws, a rope suddenly wrapped around the lizard man's neck. Shish. The bullets were ejected under the impetus of the electromagnetic pulse, and the powerful impact could directly smash a lizard man's head into pieces. After various electronic products and home appliances turned into mechanical chaos, they ran to the street and started an indiscriminate attack. Various sports cars and locomotives on the street also became the main force. Seeing the chaotic scene around him, Teepee, who was originally shocked, immediately closed his mouth. Hey, fuck, where did these robots come from? Comparing the two, the one in Manhattan is obviously more threatening. The rope suddenly tightened, and the lizard man who was flying in the air was pulled back on the spot and fell heavily to the ground. Boom! Merlin looked up, and a man in tights and a red mask appeared on the battlefield. Behind him was a dark vigilante mecha. Daredevil. In order to facilitate the investigation of the task of resurrecting his girlfriend Erica, Matt bought a vigilante from Merlin with a down payment for the journey. By the way, Merlin also installed an intelligent sensor radar for it to facilitate its driving. His recent investigation has also made progress, and he has obtained information about Dragon Bone in the hand. But before he could continue to investigate, the city's evolution tasks were overwhelmingly covered. After the green rain stopped, he got the task about Merlin, and without thinking too much, he drove the vigilante from Hell's Kitchen to Manhattan urgently. A dull whistling sound suddenly sounded, and the vigilante mecha wore black and sharp metal eye patches, and swept out with a red metal blind stick like mats. Bang bang bang. The thick and huge metal blind stick drew a red arc in the air, and wherever it passed, people suddenly fell on their backs. The burly lizardmen and mechanical chaotic species were swept away. Immediately afterwards, the vigilante mecha raised its blind stick again, pointed forward and twisted its wrist. Crack! A missile flew out from the end of the blind stick, and attacked a chaotic species transformed into a taxi. Rumble. With cats and dogs, he is content now. Handsome. Merlin's eyes lit up when he saw Matt's vigilante. Because they were crowded together, it was difficult to dodge the impact of the inclined magic treasure and the large truck's sharp cone phantom. Seeing the strong man's face, the little mute investigated the other party's information. Zzz. The Hellcat slid and drifted in front of Merlin and the others, and the moment the car door opened, a person and a dog were picked out of it. Yours turned into a cat. Merlin looked at the big black and red metal cat behind him and said with a surprised look on his face. Not to be outdone in the sky, Drosso and Tyrant were like a flock of birds, dancing messily across the sky. Bang bang bang. Each lizard man was shoveled into the sky and fell freely at the moment of contact. The dense lizard man and chaotic species continued to fall from the sky like dumplings. Other players should be arriving as well. Manhattan is not a big area. According to the time, some players from nearby areas should also be arriving. Ahaha, that's really good, let's make a big fuss. The journey of the saint jumped with a shell cigar in his mouth, his tone magnetic and low. The familiar scene happened again, and the journey of the saint quickly transformed into a metal skeleton transformer, with scarlet eyes, like a skeleton soldier from hell, holding a nozzle in his hand and a cigar with a shell in his mouth. Fire is everywhere. Cuckoo kiki. The machinery on the Hellcat's body behind him quickly twisted and turned, and leapt into the air. Bang! A huge black and red cat-shaped transformer appeared on the battlefield. A bald and bulky man in a black t-shirt got off the leading phantom truck. Roar! Seeing the menacing convoy, a lizard man jumped up suddenly, trying to avoid the slope, fell on the top and directly pulled out the humans in the cab to shreds. It has a dark and strong metal body, dexterous red metal cat claw gloves and cat ears, a whip-like black and red metal cat tail, and smart circular headlight cat eyes. However, before he could finish marveling at this, a burst of supercharged cat sounds accompanied by the roar of the exhaust exploded above the street. Buzz! Sure enough, as soon as he finished speaking, a burst of dense roaring sounded over the entire street. You guys arrived just in time. Merlin grinned. Stark in the air was about to say something enviously, when the roar of the locomotive suddenly sounded again. My wife always said that my car is just cold metal, but now, it has changed. John touched Hellcat's chin affectionately and said with a smile. However, the next moment, a pointed phantom truck suddenly transformed into a giant transformer, and the metal-pointed cone in front also turned into a huge drill weapon, like a mechanical needle bee, instantly piercing the lizard man. Buzz! Uncle Punishment, who was wearing a black skull t-shirt, twisted the accelerator with one hand, and held a heavy grenade launcher in the other, blasting open a passage with an explosion. I'm not late. John, wearing a suit and holding a Mk2 pump-action shotgun in his hand, asked Merlin. These people are not easy to mess with. Bang bang bang. The group of lizards and mechanical chaos in the periphery turned their backs, as if some ferocious beast broke in suddenly. After Hobbs got out of the car, he looked at John and the others with a frozen expression. Full of futuristic wasteland style. Are you okay? Uncle Punishment asked, looking at Merlin. The slope magic treasure and cone phantom on the ground collided with the chaotic lizardmen and chaotic species first. Boom, boom. The whole street turned into a sea of flames at this moment, and only a blazing flame erupted from the eyes. These transformers are more or less influenced by the driver, at least Matt and his blind vigilante mech and Uncle Punisher and his wasteland wind skeleton saint have similar temperaments. Wow, it seems to be a convoy of forklifts. Stark in the air looked at a group of vehicles galloping from the outside, a little surprised. Wow, woof woof. Duke next to him also yelled twice mockingly. Cuckoo kiki. On the empty streets outside, one after another, inclined magic treasures and sharp cone phantoms lined up on the road unimpeded. Shish. In the sky, countless missiles sprayed out from the bodies of DeRosso and the Tyrant as if they didn't need money, forming a missile barrage, and there was a carpet bombing towards the bottom. There is no doubt that Manhattan has the most wealthy people. Matt swung his blind stick and walked calmly towards Merlin with his back to the firelight. Luke Hobbs, the leader of the elite task force of the Diplomatic Security Service, has never missed a mission during his mission. Uncle Punishment rode his saint's journey through the gunpowder smoke, breaking through the flame passage like a ghost knight, and arrived in front of Merlin and the others. Then a black and red Dodge Hellcat rushed into the inner circle. There was a chaotic dance of demons. Break, open the door. Zzzz. A pointed phantom truck broke through the flames and arrived in front of Merlin and the others carrying a convoy of sloped magic treasures. But now he was not in the mood to study these, but looked at the high school student who was protected in the middle. Merlin Shao, it seems that you are the main character on the human side of this game. This game platform is such a fool, it actually pushed a child out. Looking at Merlin's immature face, he gritted his teeth and cursed angrily. Merlin, I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.